Jumbo Africa. It's a good morning right here on Wednesday. Yes, this is the Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin.
I'm Kendall Makamat.
And we will be with you until 12 o'clock today. Now, today we focus on the Western Cape High Court, which gave Parliament 18 months to force political parties to disclose private funding. Now, this is a big one, Kendall. It's been a while coming. People are calling for political parties to tell us.
Absolutely massive. Open the cupboard doors, open the vaults. Let's see who's putting money into all these political parties that we support on the streets. And I want to find out from you, what do you think? Do you think the disclosure of political funding will assist in fighting corruption?
Well, so far, 168 votes in. 68% are saying yes, it will assist in fighting corruption here in South Africa. Only 32% are not agreeing with the point.
Yeah, more than 2/3 saying yes, it should help, and finding out who puts money where, which politician is in whose pocket. Mr. Andrew Mauchana says, I don't think so, because politicians are professional liars. They're just going to smile and lie in our faces.
This one from Michael the Big M Satola says, no, I remember when the DA wanted the ANC to disclose its funders, and my ANC said, no problem, but you must do the same. And our DA kept quiet ever since. Wow. Ooh. There you have it.
Shots fired.
There are some contradictions there. So you let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. We'll read them as we continue. But we're also looking at a question today, Kendall, a very important one, because we're looking at economic crimes.
Yeah.
And we do know that the newly established People's Tribunal on Economic Crimes in South Africa will seek to join the dots over the past 4 decades, that's 40 years, from the apartheid era economic crimes to the 1999 arms deal, and even up until today where we have state capture.
And we're asking you, in that light, how do you think we should deal with economic crimes? How do we get it right? What do we need to do?
Let's take a look at what you are telling us on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom.
First up, we've got a comment here, and that's from Collins Delele. It says, by voting the current administration out, period.
This one from Michael the Big M says, truth is, our hands are tight. The fat cats are looting every second. Harsher penalties, jail terms, etc. are not happening. The hawks are failing. Well, Michael the Big M, that is why the tribunal will be looking into that. And of course, we'll be speaking to some of the role players today to find out what can be done to stop this scourge. But as usual, we have a sports question.
Yes, we do. We had a wonderful Cosatu Cup out in Zimbabwe. Banyana come back, and they've won the cup. We want to find out from you. SAFA is still in the process of deciding who's going to be taking the top job, because as you know, Desiree Ellis was an interim coach. Should SAFA appoint Desiree Ellis as the Banyana coach? Is what we're asking you.
Well, let's take a look at what you are telling us. On the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. This one coming from Togozani says, why not? If she has got the required qualifications, they must give her the job. Now, that's a very important point there.
Michael Bigham's told her, yes, absolutely, Elvis, I agree with you. I personally think she has stated her case and did something that our overrated coaches couldn't do. SAFA should just be begging her right now.
Well, somebody else is suggesting, why should we bring mercenaries into the country when we have our own talent here? Talented coaches.
And the one thing that stands out is that when Verapa was brought in, she was brought in to bring up South African talent and coaching talent. Well, here it is. She's done it.
So, SAFA, here's your chance. Well, you can still let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at your news headlines. Political parties are reacting differently to yesterday's judgment of the High Court that gave Parliament 18 months to force political parties to disclose private funding. Cosatu expresses confidence that yesterday's anti-corruption marches achieved its purpose. And the sentencing proceedings in the rape case of Kwaito star Brickz are expected to resume at the Roodepoort Magistrates Court today. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
There was quite a lot happening. We're also waiting to see what happens with Desiree Ellis and the SAFA thing. But the big one really today is how the Proteas will be starting up their test under Otis Gibson in Potchefstroom. against Bangladesh. It's been some 9 years since we had a test played in Potchefstroom, so it remains to be seen whether we're going to see a green mamba or not. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
It's a nice opportunity for us to start fresh, new season, new coach.
It's new beginnings for the Proteas as they face Bangladesh in the first of 2 tests under the guidance of new coach Otis Gibson.
She was one of 3 of the coaches that were interviewed for the head coach position.
SAFA might choose to reward triumphant Cosatu Cup coach Desiree Ellis with an assistant coach post rather than the widely expected top job.
Mbappe, what a touch! He's got it across and it's in, and Neymar's got his goal.
Neymar and Cavani seem to have patched up their on-field differences as they combined with teenage star Kylian Mbappe to destroy Bayern Munich by 3-0 in the Champions League group stage match last night. All this in more detail I'll have for you later on. Do stay with us as Elvis has got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. Now, there have been mixed reactions from political parties on yesterday's judgment of the High Court in the Western Cape that gave Parliament 18 months to force political parties to disclose private funding. Some political parties fear that the ruling could jeopardize their funding. The Democratic Alliance has warned that the judgment could render Parliament's work unnecessary. The application was launched by My Vote Counts. Now, it's a non-profit company aimed to improve the accountability, transparency and inclusiveness of elections and politics in South Africa.
The judgment comes as a special committee of Parliament is reviewing the law governing the funding of political parties. My Vote Counts challenged the constitutionality of the Promotion of Access to Information Act. It argued that the legislation did not provide for a systematic recording and disclosure of information relating to private funding of parties. Judge Shenaz Mir agreed with My Vote Counts and ordered Parliament to correct the defect in the Act.
As MVC, we are happy with the judgment. What it means is that there's recognition that political party funding information is required for the effective exercise of the right to vote, the right to make a political choice. MVC has argued consistently that the right to vote is not just the right to make an X, but the right to make an informed vote. And I think this judgment confirms that.
The DA initially opposed the application, but now questions whether the judgment is not superfluous.
The only question that we have is whether it's necessary for Parliament to amend the Promotion of Access to Information Act, or whether the job has already been done in terms of the new bill.
The EFF has welcomed the ruling.
We fully welcome the judgment and we're willing to show our books in any way. As the EFF, we have been opening up our books publicly to our members and to all interested parties. We do not have any dodgy funders as the EFF.
The UDM says the ruling is a victory for democracy and accountability. It could see the current parliamentary process accelerated.
To be concluded, because the PIA Act will just remove the disallowance of disclosure. What we're busy with is to indicate the who, how, and when it must be disclosed. So it's actually an injection into the arm or into the work of this ad hoc committee.
The High Court has given Parliament 18 months to change the law. Vuyani Green, SABC News, Parliament.
Cosatu's General Secretary Begin Jalinjali says that they are happy with the turnout of yesterday's nationwide anti-corruption marches. Speaking to the SABC News this morning, Jalinjali says that the turnout shows that workers are not happy with corruption and state capture.
The organizational and the expectation, yes, we're happy. But the matter that we're protesting is still there. So it's a long journey that we need to travel together with the society as a whole to highlight the impact, the negative impact of the state capture and the corruption. So we're happy that workers wanted to be part of that contribution to raise their voice, and I think they did very well.
Yeah, and there were also calls made, as you say, for more marches of that nature. We've also heard yourself saying that if workers are not happy with how the ANC responds to their needs, they should even take it upon themselves to march the ANC itself.
Indeed, the issue is not an event we have said, so it's going to be a process, a long process, because those who are the beneficiaries of state capture and corruption, they're going to resist. So workers understood that this is not an event we have to march. We have to raise our voices everywhere where it matters.
Yeah. In fact, yesterday some of your members were saying that they will not be participating at the march itself because it looks like Cosatu has shifted away from its primary mandate. Have you considered that you sort of, shifted away from representing the workers in South Africa?
Not at all, because what was happening yesterday is the mandate of the workers themselves. So from where we are, we get the mandate from the workers. We've been addressing a number of shops to a number of workplaces. Not a single one has said, no, I'm not going to be part of this particular, precisely because workers understand that corruption will affect them most. They are going to be the first victims of any corruption. They are experiencing it through their schooling of their children, where the teacher will say, I have no instrument to teach. They experience it in the hospitals where there is no linen, there is no medication, and etc. So we will appreciate workers when they can come up and say their views in any way. We take the mandate from them, but most of our members enjoy this particular. You could have seen them in the marches. They were very, very excited that at least they're raising their voices.
KZN ANC says it is eagerly awaiting a decision from the National ANC on whether it should appeal the Maritzburg High Court ruling that nullified the 2015 Provincial Elective Conference or not. Speaking to the SABC News earlier, KZN ANC spokesperson Ndumiseni Ntuli said that they're hoping that a decision will be made tomorrow when the ANC-NEC meets. Now, yesterday was the deadline for the ANC to appeal the Pietermaritzburg High Court ruling.
We were all waiting with intense expectations that yesterday the National and reflect on this matter so that we can get a conclusion. We are told that, reliably informed, that the working committee did not take place yesterday. But obviously tomorrow is a standing meeting of the National Executive Committee, because remember the one that was last week was a special meeting convened to deal with the KZN question. Our view is that it's not too late. The NEC is going to convene tomorrow. And as we said before, we are Democrats and we believe in the supremacy of the National Executive Committee. Its decisions and its authority is what we are going to be implementing competently. Whatever the NEC decides will be our own decision, and we'll implement it as if it was conceptualized and decided by ourselves.
Parliament says that continued links with auditing firm KPMG risk damaging the reputation of the House. Parliament yesterday announced its decision to terminate its contract with KPMG. Now, the move is over a scandal involving the influential Gupta family, which is connected to President Jacob Zuma. The termination includes a contract with KPMG with the medical aid scheme for the members of Parliament.
Wits University held a discussion on the lessons that can be learned from the KPMG scandal, which saw the audit firm threatened with lawsuits and blacklisting by SARS, suffer massive reputational damage and lose tens of millions of rands in client accounts. Former finance ministers Nhlanhla Nene and Pravin Gordhan shared a stage with Nonkululeko Gobodo and economist Iraj Abedin in a discussion chaired by Wits professor Imran Valodia. Gordhan called out unethical business practices and encouraged people to do the right thing.
Don't chase profit and money to the extent that you actually sacrifice the very principles that we say we actually subscribe to. So somewhere we have to say, we have to draw a line and say this far and no further. But that takes leadership, it takes courage, it takes also creativity and hard work to make your money some other way, rather than a crooked or half-crooked way.
Abedian warned against what he called natural resource capture, which he says is far more wide-reaching than state capture.
National resource capture is about when a group, through a very complex professional, meaning legal, accounting, advisory, banking, political, and every other profession, they get hold of ways and means of extracting national resources for their personal or partisan benefit.
Gobodo called on the ANC and senior executives in government to call out corrupt practices in business.
The most important responsibility about leadership is when you are seen and present when there's a crisis. You can't be missing in action when there's a crisis because then you are failing in your leadership role. So it is very important. We've come to a defining moment in South Africa where we have to choose which route are we going to take.
The panelists all agreed that although the scandal had tainted the audit profession, lessons on practicing good governance and a higher standard of accountability can reverse the damage caused to the profession. Nzinga Kunta, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, Cabinet is deliberating on how to save South African Airways from its latest cash crisis after at least one creditor insisted it be paid by Saturday. Treasurer Director General Dondo Mohojani says that SAA has to pay back Citibank 1.8 billion rand by the end of September. In total, SAA owes almost 7 billion rand in debt that has to be paid by the end of the month. In July, government had to provide it with over 2 billion rand from an emergency fund to pay what it owed to Standard Chartered. Mohojani says that negotiations with lenders may lessen the amount. SAA needs about 13 billion rand bailout over the next 3 years. Into the courts now, sentencing proceedings in the rape case of the Kwaito star Sipho Ndlovu, also known as Brickz, are expected to resume at the Roodepoort Magistrates Court today. Sentencing was postponed 2 weeks ago when his lawyer told the court that he needed transcripts and pre-sentencing reports from a private probation officer. After a long legal battle, Brickz was found guilty in July this year of raping a 16-year-old girl at his home in November 2013. His bail of 50,000 rand was revoked after the conviction. The Democratic Alliance has urged President Jacob Zuma to immediately appoint a new SABC board. The deadline for the president to sign off on the new board expired on Tuesday, and the term of the interim board ended on the same day. Now, earlier this month, the National Assembly recommended 12 names to serve on the board, and these are being considered by the president. The DA's call for confirmation of the new board comes in the wake of the SABC's annual report, which showed a loss of 977 million rand. Treasury is considering the SABC's request for a bailout. Well, as some suggest, it would be a guarantee. Now, tributes are pouring in for the self-styled American icon and Playboy founder Hugh Hefner, who has died of natural causes at the age of 91. Hefner helped to usher in the 1960s sexual revolution with his groundbreaking men's magazine and built a business empire around his lifestyle. The multimillionaire was also a political activist and philanthropist, active in several causes and public issues. Now, that's your news for now. Our theme today, we're looking at the broader aspect of economic crimes, and the recently announced People's Tribunal on Economic Crimes in South Africa is a civil society-led process that aims to allow an inclusive as well as an evidence-based discussion on the interconnected nature of state capture in South Africa. Now, you saw Cosatu marching against state capture yesterday. The tribunal will seek to join the dots over the past 4 decades from apartheid-era economic crimes to the 1999 arms deal and contemporary state capture. The first hearings will be held at the Constitutional Hill here in Johannesburg from the 8th to the 12th of November 2017. Research Manager at Public Affairs Research Institute, Dr. Mbongiseni Buthelezi, he joins us now in studio to tell us more about the People's Tribunal. Now, Doctor, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Thank you, Elvis, and good morning.
First and foremost, tell us about the tribunal and why was there need for the tribunal?
The tribunal is, like you said, a civil society initiative. What we're seeing currently is that there's a lot happening in the private sector. People who are thought to or have been found to have done wrong, there are consequences. There have been resignations at some companies, but in the public sector, nothing's happening. Nothing is happening because state institutions that are supposed to be taking the lead are not doing that. All we hear is talk that there are investigations, things will happen. The idea of a people's tribunal is to create a space for the public at large, for people to bring evidence of what they know in terms of economic crime, not just looking at what is happening currently in terms of what is called state capture, but going back 40 years, going back to 1977, to bring that evidence into the public domain and lay it out so that what then happens is various other bodies, public bodies on one hand, but also civil society organizations can then use that evidence to drive a push for something to be done, for there to be consequences, not just for state capture in the present, but also for people who are involved in economic crime going back to the apartheid period.
When we talk about economic crimes, what are we talking about?
The best thing is to illustrate that with examples. If we go back, when we talk about inequality in South Africa in the present, it's not just a result of what has happened in the last 23 years since the advent of democracy. It's a result of a massive project of state capture that happened under apartheid. There are a lot of people who enrich themselves unduly by using elements of the state, by using state-owned enterprises, by feasting off the public purse, going back to the apartheid period. Arms deals, for example, if you look at the work that has been done recently by Open Secrets, Henny van Vuuren's book, Apartheid, Guns and Money. What it shows is that there was a massive industry that was circumventing sanctions, where arms were being sold to South Africa to suppress uprisings against the apartheid regime. And there were people, there were companies making money, companies that are continuing to make money even to this day of arms trades. Some of those companies were involved in the 1999 arms deal, companies that had been circumventing the rules, international law under apartheid, simply remade themselves, refashioned themselves, and continued to make money and went into bed with the post-apartheid government. It's all those things that we want to bring out into the public domain. One of the things to also remember is that the recommendations of the TRC were that people who had not come forward, who had not disclosed what they'd been involved in and had not been granted amnesty, there was a process that was supposed to follow from there of investigations and prosecutions. And hardly anything happened. You can count on one hand the number of people who have been prosecuted for crimes that they were involved in during apartheid. It's partly trying to restart that process, that conversation in South Africa. But what do we do now about things that were supposed to happen and there was no political appetite to follow through on?
Are you then suggesting that the commissions that took place over a number of years, especially the Arms Deal Commission, which found there was no wrongdoing, is absolute hogwash, and that this tribunal will make a difference?
The suggestion is that, there are questions around the Security Commission. Its findings are being challenged in court by certain organizations. We don't know what the findings of the courts are going to be about that. But from a lot of people in civil society, a lot of citizens, there's a lot of unhappiness about that process. It did not reveal what we had anticipated it would reveal. And so this process, it draws on international practice. There have been these kinds of people's tribunals on Palestine, for example. The first one, in fact, was on American crimes in Vietnam in 1968. And the idea is to bring out the stories, to have a panel of independent adjudicators, people of high standing in society, both in South Africa and internationally, 7 panelists who will then consider the evidence that's put before the panel and will then write a report. It's not a legal process. It's a civil society process that attempts to get a conversation going and that also attempts to get people talking, but also people putting pressure where the pressure is due for public institutions to do their job.
So the People's Tribunal will have no prosecutorial authority?
No.
over any of these. It will be a basis really for public to engage.
Indeed, indeed.
So you've invited now people and organizations to submit information. What will happen to that information once it's all compiled?
So the information is going to go to the Secretariat. There's going to be a group of people who have done research in these areas of economic crime. They are going to then sift through that information. They're going to then put it forward to evidence leaders who are going to present it at the tribunal's hearing in November. The first one is going to be on the 8th of November at Constitution Hill. They will then work with those evidence leaders to put the information in a form that can be presented publicly. Some of the people who come forward with knowledge, with information that they have about these economic crimes will be invited to come and present their submissions orally. But everything that is submitted to the Secretariat will be treated confidentially. People's identities will be protected, except in cases where it has been discussed and agreed with people, put forward information that they will come forward at the tribunal and present it publicly. And that information will then go forward and be presented in this public forum.
Who will be sitting on the tribunal and on the panel, and who is the tribunal being funded by?
So the 7 panelists, we're still finalizing those. We've approached a number of high-profile people in South Africa, former judges, but also very well-known civil society players, and also not just in South Africa, but also internationally. Some people have been involved in similar tribunals elsewhere before, and we're finalizing that list of 7 panelists. Those panelists, the people will publicly hear this evidence and will also invite some of the people, some of the organizations, some of the companies implicated in the information that will be put forward to also make submissions. They will then do the work of adjudicating and write a report that will be released in early 2018, hopefully.
Political parties will have to tell us who funds them, who is funding the tribunal.
The tribunal is funded by a number of civil society funders. One of them is the Open Society Foundation. The other one is the Claude Leon Foundation and the Heinrich Böll Stiftung, the 3 main funders of the tribunal.
It's a very broad mandate for the tribunal. And economic crimes seems to be part and parcel of our psyche here in South Africa. We've seen KPMG, we've seen the Gupta links and so forth. Do you think that this tribunal will get to the point where we can bring an end to corruption? And economic crimes for that matter?
I'm not sure that it can bring us to a place where we can bring an end to those things. But what it can do is it can help us connect the dots. There have been arguments, for example, that some of the work around state capture, some of the arguments being made by Cosatu in the march yesterday, for example, have a certain kind of myopia. Because it's not only in the last few years, economic crime goes back in South Africa. Some would argue it goes even further back to the beginnings of colonialism in South Africa. It's those dots we need to join and be able to put the big picture in front of all of us and have proper discussions about what we do, how we move forward, how we build a society that's built on values of anti-corruption, but also on integrity in professions, in state institutions, which is where I think the major issue lies.
Now, those found guilty of committing economic crimes, how will they be dealt with, and what will be the next step then?
So this tribunal is not going to find anybody guilty, since it is not a court of law.
Yes.
But what we hope it will do is it will then make the prosecution authorities, the investigative authorities, set up and use some of this evidence as basis for further investigations and for prosecutions. The idea really is also to couple this tribunal with a big civil society campaign that involves all citizens in South Africa, in similar ways that Corruption Watch, for example, has been running public campaigns that will then put pressure on these public institutions to do their job, to investigate and to prosecute, and for us to see consequences for people who are found to be involved in economic crime.
Doctor, we're out of time, but I know it's a very important point. You need to tell us, how do people get in touch with the tribunal in order, if they have the evidence that you are looking for?
So the Secretariat for the Tribunal is at Open Secrets, which is an organization based in Cape Town, and you can contact them via the email address researcher@opensecrets.org.za, and by phone on 021 447 2701.
27?
01.
Is there a website already, Doctor, or not?
There is. The URL, I think, is peoplestribunal.org.za, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure on that one.
People's Tribunal. Well, that'll be probably easier to Google for people to get out there. Doctor, I thank you so much for your time, and good luck with the tribunal. That was the research manager at the Public Affairs Research Institute, Dr. Mbongeseni Buthelezi. Well, it's time to do some house cleaning, but before we do that, let's take a look at the question that we posed to you today in relation to economic crimes and how do we deal with it. That's the question we want to know from you. Some answers to that. We want to solicit those answers from you. How should we deal with economic crimes in South Africa? Let me take a look at what you're telling us on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. Let's start off here with Memani that says, by instilling good ethics and its benefits. If you have ethics and you know the benefits thereof, Mamani says, then we'll get to the bottom of it. Kenneth Malachi says, we need a justice system that is decolonized, which is ready to punish all wrongdoing, regardless of age, gender, of the position of the offenders. That's how we need to deal with it, says Kenneth. Desiree says, by forming our own economy, 1, and 2, introduce strong justice system which will work for all and not a few people. Now those are all your comments thus far. You can still keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue during the course of the program at SABC Newsroom. But right now, let's take a look at what's happening on Twitter. Let's do some housekeeping here. And we start off with a recapping of the Cosatu marches, #Cosatu marches that took place around the country yesterday. It was all about state capture, corruption, generally unemployment, job losses in the mining sector, and perhaps a few others. Then, Hyde Park Mall was packed for the launch of the Ridi Tlabi book about Fezekile Kuzwayo, better known as Kwezi. Now, this relates to the 2006 case when President Jacob Zuma was on trial for the rape of Fezekile and Ntsukela Kuzwayo. Now, the president was acquitted, and many years later, Kwezi passed on, but not before she told her story. #Kwezi. Then, different nations are promoting the wonders of their country today, from the most well-known touristy must-see spots to the unexplored. We are all encouraged to travel in order to have more tolerance of the diverse people of the world. Travel teaches toleration. #World Tourism Day. Go and see what they're doing there. And sex icon revolutionary and Playboy magazine founder Hugh Hefner has died at the age of 91, the ripe old age there. Now, he peacefully passed away in his home, the Playboy Mansion. You remember the Playboy Mansion? Often seen in silk robes and surrounded by gorgeous women, he was best known for his magazine, which he started in 1953, and his life quote, "Life is too short to be living somebody else's dream." Married to 3 wives in his lifetime and having been with 5 life partners, he leaves behind 4 children. He's expected to be buried in a plot next to Marilyn Monroe. #Hugh Hefner. There you have the man himself. He died. Now, a picture of the day comes from Ishbash and is captioned, "Rest in peace, Hugh Hefner. Nobody will say he's in a better place now. Rest in peace, Hugh Hefner." Well, there you have it. That's the picture of the day. Now, the comment of the day comes from a retired judge who says, "A very good verdict for the public. All parties will now disclose #party funding donors. Now we will know how captured the political parties are and who has captured them. We are in for shocking revelations." What do you think? Well, now let's take a look and throw forward what's happening in the courts. We start off in KwaZulu-Natal, where 5 men accused of cannibalism are expected to be back in the Escort Magistrates Court today. The 5, including a traditional healer, face charges of murder and conspiracy to commit murder. It's alleged that the men raped and killed women and killed a woman rather, and cut up her body, which they then consumed. 4 of them were arrested on August the 18th after one of them allegedly walked into the local police station where he told officers that he was tired of eating human flesh. Moving to Cape Town now, an alleged 53-year-old child rapist is expected to appear in the Bishop Lavis Magistrates Court on the Cape Flats. Now, he is alleged to have raped a 6-year-old girl in Bonteheuwel a few months ago. Community members earlier expressed their outrage at the incident. The accused was denied bail last month. Now, these are some of the stories, court cases we'll keep you updated with, so you have to stay tuned and see how they develop. Now, let's throw forward. Tomorrow, on the show, the focus falls on racism and violence in our schools. This after a number of shocking incidents that made international headlines in our schools. We'll take a look at those issues tomorrow. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back. After that, we continue our discussion on economic crimes and how do we deal with the issue and how do we keep people accountable in the country.
Africans are increasingly using digital platforms for life, work and play.
Information is key for us. We live in an information age. We live in the digital age.
I'm mostly on WhatsApp because not all my friends have iPhones, so they don't have FaceTime.
On Network, we tell you about Africa's technology and social media landscape. And some here are using the internet to raise political concerns.
Some of the exposés on political issues come from what we call your diasporic online media.
Africans are also using technology to create. For African technology and social media news, join me, Phumelele Zondi, on Network every Sunday at 9 p.m.
Continue with our theme today, looking at economic crimes and corruption. You saw Cosatu march yesterday. Now, the time has come for every business in South Africa to check out their moral compass, clean up their act if necessary, and then get behind a corruption-busting integrity commission. Now, this cautionary quote, note and appeal comes from Advocate Paul Hoffman, SC, Director of Accountability Now and author of Confronting the Corrupt. Accountability Now is devoted to ensuring that the rule of law is upheld and enforced for the good of all by ensuring that governments, parastatals and the private sector are held to account. Director of Accountability Now, Advocate Paul Hoffman, now joins us from Cape Town. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis, and good morning to your viewers as well. Thank you for that very fulsome introduction.
First and foremostly, Advocate, where do we stand as South Africa in relation to the world with regards to corruption?
Well, we're in a sort of mid-range position, but falling rapidly. The more disclosures that come out, the lower we sit on the corruption perception index, which is put out by Transparency International. We're in the 60s out of about 120 countries that are on that list. And it's simply not good enough when you have regard to the constitutional setup that we have in place, and when you have regard to what the Constitutional Court has said in a binding way is required in order to deal with economic crime in general and corruption in particular properly in South Africa.
Do we have a crisis that relates to economic crimes in this country, Professor? Because we just had a chat right now with the the People's Tribunal that's being set up in order to make sure that people are held to account. But it seems like it's getting worse and worse. We also seen economic crimes that have reached pandemic proportions in the light of the recent revelations of the state capture and the Gupta emails. Are we reaching those crisis proportions?
Yes, I think that the culture of impunity that is abroad in South Africa at the moment, if you are politically connected, then you get away with crime, is at the heart of the problem. There is scientific information that suggests that in any given population, 10% of the people are never corrupt, 10% are always corrupt, and the 80% in the middle can go either way depending on the circumstances. And the most important of those circumstances is the knowledge that if you try a corrupt activity, you will be caught, you will be tried, you will be punished. And that deterrent effect reduces the culture of impunity and improves the situation in society in relation to what is essentially theft from poor people. If you want a definition of corruption that is meaningful, think of corruption, especially in the public sector, as theft from the poor. Because what is happening with corruption is that the money that is intended for service delivery gets diverted into the pockets of those who are behaving corruptly, and that money does not find its way to poverty alleviation. It's finds its way to loose living, fast cars, and perhaps slow horses.
Now, Advocate, how do we then restore this culture of accountability to make sure that people are being held to account and restore the rule of law, that people can have faith in the rule of law?
I think that it is time for the legislature and the executive branch of government, that is the national cabinet and the people who sit in parliament, to have a very careful look at what the Constitutional Court has said in relation to the requirements of effective and efficient anti-corruption machinery of state. It's not a complicated exercise. I know that very clever judges in green gowns may be intimidating to the executive and the legislature, but the bottom line is that the law is what the Constitutional Court says it is, and the Constitutional Court has already told us that our anti-corruption machinery of state, which is the entity that deals with the corrupt, has to be a single entity that has specialized and dedicated personnel who are properly trained, independent in their structure and in their operation, properly resourced in the sense that the money that is made available for them is adequate to deal with the amount of corruption at any given time, and most importantly of all, because this is what the Scorpions didn't have, the anti-corruption entity of state must enjoy security of tenure of office. Now, all of those words can be pushed down into the acronym STIRS: specialized, trained, independent, resourced, and secure in tenure of office. If we can have that, then there will be no need for a people's tribunal, because the independent corruption busters will be out there doing the work that has now fallen on the shoulders of the People's Tribunal, which has been set up in order to enable civil society to join the dots. You know, corruption as a crime is a matter for the state to deal with. And while it is a good thing that initiatives like the People's Tribunal are able to assist in joining the dots and to assist in conscientizing the public as to the extent of corruption, the bottom line is that corruption is a crime and has to be dealt with by a properly functioning criminal justice administration that does not take forever to investigate very straightforward cases of state capture, instances of racketeering, of money laundering, of fraud, and of corruption.
Are you then
That's what economic crimes really are.
Advocate, are you then suggesting that the National Prosecuting Authority, the Hawks, are not doing enough in order to stop these economic crimes that you see in the country?
It's very clear to me that the leadership of the National Prosecuting Authority is captured. The termination of the services of the last independent National Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Ntasana, was done in a way that was itself a corrupt activity. Accountability Now laid charges about that 2 years ago, July 2015. A very simple case. Here was an agreement of settlement that, on its own terms, evidences a corrupt activity on the part of the President and the Minister of Justice. And that complaint is still languishing on the desk of Mr. Mzanyati at the National Prosecuting Authority without any go forward. The Hawks have completed such investigation as they were obliged to do by the end of last year, and no go forward from the National Prosecuting Authority, which suggests to me that there is no desire to do their job properly, which is what the Constitution requires them to do. It says in terms in the Constitution that prosecution services must be rendered without fear, favor, or prejudice, which means that you mustn't fear the powerful when you are making a prosecutorial decision. You mustn't favor the person who appointed you or your friends, and you certainly mustn't prejudice the public in general in prosecutorial decision-making. Well, that type of decision-making is conspicuously absent in South Africa today. The prosecution service boasts that in the last 2 years, 151 public servants involved in procurement irregularities were prosecuted, but the Auditor General tells us that there are 3,000 such dockets waiting for attention. At that rate, it's going to take 20 years to deal with the existing backlog, let alone anything that happens in the future. We're not going to get it right if we don't establish proper anti-corruption machinery of state. And our point is that to do that, an integrity commission that slots into Chapter 9 of the Constitution between the public protector, who only has a mandate to deal with public maladministration, and the Auditor General, who's like a canary in the coal mine. An integrity commission between them to prevent, combat, investigate, and prosecute economic crime, corruption,
Advocate,
is what South Africa needs.
Advocate, in closing and very briefly, what is the cost to the country in relation to economic crimes, and can it be traced?
It's very difficult to put a number on it. I've seen former Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, talking about the numbers. I mean, the arms deal alone is 70 billion rands of money wasted. In the Gupta leaks, his number is in excess of 100 billion. You have no idea how many schools, how many hospitals, how many university students' fees can be paid if that money is brought back into clean hands and taken from the dirty hands in which it is at present.
Advocate, I thank you so much for your time and joining us in our Cape Town studios.
You're welcome.
Now that was the Director of Accountability Now, Advocate Paul Hoffman, who joined us from Cape Town, as you heard. He wants another crime-busting integrity commission that will take the place of, some would say, the NPA. Now, some housekeeping. Let's take a look at what's happening on our Facebook page. If you look there, the DA has urged President Jacob Zuma to immediately appoint a new SABC board to get the public broadcaster back on track. And the deadline for President Jacob Zuma to sign off on the 12 board members expired on Tuesday, and the SABC is in limbo after the term of the interim board expired on Tuesday night. Then, Gauteng has decided to do away with labour brokers before the end of the year. Premier David Makura made that announcement when he addressed Cosatu supporters protesting against corruption and state capture in Johannesburg yesterday. And finally, from news abroad, the United Nations Entity for Women has welcomed a decision by Saudi Arabia to allow women to drive, a move that would, by 2018, end a long-standing policy viewed as out of step with the rest of the world. Now, you can find all of these stories and more on our Facebook page and, of course, the SABC News website. Let's now take a look what's happening on the front pages of the newspapers from around the globe. And we start off in Europe. The Times reports that Ryanair faces prosecution for misleading passengers after 400,000 more travelers were dragged into the chaos over cancelled flight. And there's that legal storm that hits Ryanair over chaos of the Axe flights. You can see there on the front page. Moving on now to New York, the Financial Times there says that American corporations would see their tax rate cut to below what many of their rivals pay elsewhere under a sweeping White House and congressional plan that aims to slash corporate tax to 20% and largely end the taxation of non-US earnings. Now, what is that all about? Can you believe it? And finally, in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that Jerusalem will not let continuous Palestinian diplomatic steps against Israel go without a response. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, said yesterday evening in reaction to Interpol's decision earlier in the day to admit the Palestinians as a member state. Now, those are all your newspapers from around the globe. But we'll take now a short break. After that, we'll come back at the top of the hour with some more. Stay tuned.
This distinguished CEO would say the best way to enjoy a brandy is whilst wearing diamond-encrusted lamb's wool socks, accompanied by
the smell of fresh money. Woo!
Really? Sock diamonds?
Well, we'd say a brandy enjoyed with last night's pizza works just as well.
Get a 750ml bottle of Richelieu International Brandy for only $114.99 from Tops at Spar.
We pump up your energy, keeping you in action through sports updates while resting at home. This is what's happening in your world of sports every weekend.
In the second half, Kolisi and Jaco Kriel combined well, and Kolisi scored his second try. He was also named man of the match.
Confusion from the West defenders gifted Batosi with a close-range goal.
In the 10th round, he pinned a visibly fatigued McGregor on the ropes and hammered the Irishman before the referee stepped in to stop the bout.
He's a tough competitor.
He's a lot more experienced, especially in the layer.
Keep it locked on Sports Live every Saturday and Sunday at 20:30.
Thanks very much and warm welcome. Let's take a look at your weather details. Over South Africa, we are expecting partly cloudy skies for today with isolated thunder showers over the interior of Northwest. Going to Free State, over KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga and Limpopo, we are expecting 30% chance of showers for today. Otherwise, do expect partly cloudy skies over the interior. going towards the equator. 60% chance of thunder showers over the interior of DRC. And tomorrow, still expecting 30% chance of showers over the interior of South Africa and 60 just sitting over the interior of Free State, going to the interior of KwaZulu-Natal and most parts of Lesotho for tomorrow. Limpopo will remain partly cloudy. Over the western parts, we are expecting clear skies. Let's take a look at your temperatures, where we are expecting much cooler temperatures over the northern interior. But if you will be in the northern parts of Northern Cape to the far western parts of Northwest, we do have a warning of high fire danger and extremely hot conditions in those regions. Please do not start any unnecessary fires and do report those fires to your authorities. A maximum of 26 is forecast in Pretoria, partly cloudy skies and partly cloudy in Polokwane with a maximum of 20, 15 in Bombela and 30% chance of showers. Moving to the interior, we're still expecting partly cloudy skies, isolated thunder showers over Free State and the interior of Northwest for today. Sutherland will be at 24, Cape Town sitting at a maximum of 25 and mostly sunny skies for today. Over Botswana, we're still expecting warm temperatures over the southern parts. Gaborone at 27 and 24 for Francistown. Extremely hot in Victoria Falls at 35 and 37 for Maung. If you will be in Harare, maximum of 27. Windhoek at 33 and partly cloudy skies along the coastal regions. Beira at a maximum of 19. And in Madagascar, we are expecting 30% chance of showers over the eastern parts. Over the interior, partly cloudy. Victoria at 29. Port Louis will be at a maximum of 27 and sunny skies expected. Over DRC today, 30 to 60% chance of thunder showers. Juba at 34 and 29 for Mombasa, mostly sunny skies. Over the northern parts, the Sahara Desert, we are expecting clear skies over the interior, but along the coastal regions, partly cloudy with 30% chance of showers. Over Nigeria, 60% chance of showers going to the interior of Cameroon. Up to 80% chance of thunder showers can be expected. 2 thunderstorms in those regions for today and tomorrow. And again, tomorrow, still seeing clear skies over most parts of the Sahara Desert, but along the coastal regions, partly cloudy with 30% chance of showers. A maximum of 31 is forecast for Cairo with clear skies, 27 for Jerusalem, Riyadh at 35, 41 for Agadez, Tripoli rainy with a maximum of 33. Going to Nigeria, 60% chance of thunder showers along the borders of Cameroon, Yaoundé at 27 and 28 for Lagos. Niamey at a maximum of 39 and mostly sunny skies. Moving to Bamako, we are expecting partly cloudy skies and 30 to 60% chance of showers for today. Marrakech at 32 and sunny skies. That's all. Ndawiyando.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it leaders on a soapbox, spouting rhetoric for the crowd? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people. And your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
The Pan-African Parliament, as a legislative body, could go a long way in continuing to promote women's rights in all African member states.
Moon will be elected president. A decisive win by him will provide much-needed stability in South Korea.
The Deputy President and the SADC Oversight Committee have been mandated to convene a multi-stakeholder national dialogue before elections.
5 teams are trapped in the relegation mud. These include Bloemfontein Celtic, 12th on the log, followed by Chipa United, Free State Stars and Baroka, who are second from the bottom, as well as Highlands Park, who have won only 4 matches.
We're on point with breaking stories, detailed economy and sport. Tune into Midday Report every Monday to Friday from 12 p.m.
We are your eyes in all major events around the world.
A wonder not seen in the United States in almost 100 years.
It looks like the sky of a different world. You see the stars out during the day. You see a sunset 360 degrees all around you.
Before you leave, make sure that Dropburn is taking you through traffic alerts all around South Africa.
All we can do is stick to what we do and focus on our own job and not focus on them.
The Boks will also don the red jersey in this match to mark the 25th anniversary of rugby unity in South Africa.
An update on all major currency to guide you. A story of women in jail told in pictures by Fatima Mir through art that will blow your mind. Set the agenda for the day with Morning Live.
Welcome to the second hour here in the newsroom. It's 10:00 hours Central Africa time. I'm Elvis Preslin.
I'm Kendall Makamate.
Jumbo Africa. Now today we focus on the Western Cape High Court, which gave Parliament 18 months to force politicians and political parties to disclose private funding.
Exactly why we're asking you today. What do you think? Do you think the disclosure of political funding will assist in fighting corruption?
Let's take a look at what the polls suggest here. So far, Kendall, 168 votes in. 68% are saying yes, it will, and only 32% are saying no.
Yeah, interesting enough, very similar to what it said in the last hour. Yeah. Let's see what's being said on social media.
Maybe we can update it and see if the numbers has probably changed, but let's take a look at what you are telling us. On the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page.
Right, now we've got Nunu, who says they always lie.
This one coming from Memani says, even if the Guptas funds any political party, it's fine, as long as there's no corrupt motives behind it. Of course, if there is, then it, RNG.
It's wrong.
Then it's wrong.
You know what I've just heard as well, that Twitter from today allows you to use 280 characters. 280 characters you're now allowed to use, so finish the sentence if you'd like.
Finish the sentence so we don't get confused over here. But we're also looking at our question of the day today. Of course, earlier we chatted about the People's Tribunal that's going to be established in order to make sure that to stop economic crimes in this country, and of course for people to come forward it has got information.
Absolutely.
Yep. So that's why we're asking that question, Ken.
Absolutely. We want to find out from you how you get involved in this conversation is by telling us how should we deal with economic crimes.
Let's take a look at what you're telling us. This one coming from Torment says, SAPS, Hawks and the NPA should be independent and do what we pay them to do. It's simple.
That's what should happen. Absolutely, we agree with you. Lechasa Batlamolo says we don't have SAPS, NPA, Hawks anymore, but only corrupt officials.
Keep them coming, people. We'll read them as we continue, but we also have a sports question today. We're focusing on SAFA and Desiree Ellis.
Yes.
Yes, the coach that won Bafana, what was it? The CAF.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? Some people should say that she should be Bafana's coach. She's Banyana's coach, well, interim coach. And we want to find out from you, what do you think? Do you think SAFA, while they're deliberating about who should actually be the permanent coach, they should actually appoint her? We're asking you, should SAFA appoint Desiree Ellis as permanent Banyana coach?
And if they don't appoint as the Banyana coach, as you say, maybe Bafana needs a better coach. But let's take a look at what you're telling us.
Mr. Baxter. Just a joke. Sponiso Species says, I don't think she's ready yet. Oh, really?
Why
not?
Siboniso? Why? Lukanuto says, yes, she will fit in there.
There we go.
Short, sweet, to the point. Keep them coming. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at your news headlines. Parliament confirms that it has started looking at an alternative auditing firm to do its work. Political parties react differently to yesterday's judgment of the High Court that gave Parliament 18 months to force political parties to disclose private funding. And Cosatu expresses confidence that yesterday's anti-corruption march has achieved its purpose. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Bakabate what's happening on the sports room.
As you can see, I've got a broad smile on my face. I'm extremely excited about what's about to happen. Good morning to you. We're taking a quick look at what's happening out at Senvis Park and Potchefstroom, where the Proteas are starting their long summer, stepping out against Bangladesh in the first of two tests. Apparently, Bangladesh won the toss, chose to field, and we've got a debutant at the crease right now, Aiden Makram, South Africa's only World Cup winning coach of any age group. Aiden Makram, you'll remember the under-19s won the World Cup. Well, he was a captain then. He was Kagiso Rabada's captain. As you can see, pictures from the venue. Let's take a quick hear of what's going on.
Bowlers would have liked, but we might know more about how much pace and bounce there is with Tuscan Ahmed sharing the new ball. He's, as I said, the quickest of the Bangladesh seamers.
Well, there you have it. It's going to be quite an interesting one. We bring you live pictures of that when we have sports at about 10:40. But this is what else we've got for you in the sports today.
She was one of 3 of the coaches that were interviewed for the head coach position.
Safa, my Tuesday reward, triumphant Cosatu Cup coach Desiree Ellis with an assistant coach post rather than the widely expected top job.
Mbappe, what a touch! He's got it across and it's in, and Neymar's got his goal.
Neymar and Cavani seem to have patched up their on-field differences as they combined with teenage star Kylian Mbappe to destroy Bayern Munich by 3-0. The Champions League group stage match last night. And all this and more we'll have for you at about 10:40. Do stay with Elvis as he's got all the news for you.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. Parliament has confirmed that its principal officer has started to look for an alternative auditing firm to do its work. Now, this comes after yesterday, after it announced its decision to terminate the contract with KPMG. Parliament says that the continued links with the auditing firm KPMG risk damaging the reputation of the House. The move is over a scandal involving the influential Gupta family, which is connected to President Jacob Zuma. It includes a contract KPMG had with a medical aid scheme for members of Parliament. Now, there's been mixed reaction from political parties on yesterday's judgment of the High Court in Western Cape that gave Parliament 18 months to force political parties to disclose private funding. Some political parties fear that the ruling could jeopardize their funding. The Democratic Alliance has warned that the judgment could render Parliament's work unnecessary. The application was launched by My Vote Counts. It's a non-profit company aimed to improve the accountability, transparency and inclusiveness of elections and politics in South Africa.
The judgment comes as a special committee of Parliament is reviewing the law governing the funding of political parties. My Vote Counts challenged the constitutionality of the Promotion of Access to Information Act. It argued that the legislation did not provide for a systematic recording and disclosure of information relating to private funding of parties. Judge Shenaz Mir agreed with My Vote Counts and ordered Parliament to correct the defect in the Act.
As MVC, we are happy with the judgment. What it means is that there's recognition that political party funding information is required for the effective exercise of the right to vote, the right to make a political choice. MVC has argued consistently that the right to vote is not just the right to make an X, but the right to make an informed vote. And I think this judgment confirms that.
The DA initially opposed the application, but now questions whether the judgment is not superfluous.
The only question that we have is whether it's necessary for Parliament to amend the Promotion of Access to Information Act, or whether the job has already been done in terms of the new bill.
The EFF has welcomed the ruling.
We fully welcome the judgment and we're willing to show our books in any way. As the EFF, we have been opening up our books publicly to our members and to all interested parties. We do not have any dodgy funders as the EFF.
The UDM says the ruling is a victory for democracy and accountability. It could see the current parliamentary process accelerated.
In fact, what I think it does, it makes it more urgent for this current exercise to be concluded, because the Prior Act will just remove the disallowance of disclosure. What we're busy with is to indicate the who, how, and when it must be disclosed. So it's actually an injection into the arm or into the work of this ad hoc committee.
The High Court has given Parliament 18 months to change the law. Vuyani Green, SABC News, Parliament.
Wow. Cosatu's General Secretary Becky Njalinjali says that they are happy with the turnout of yesterday's nationwide anti-corruption marches. Speaking to the SABC News this morning, Njalinjali says that the turnout shows that workers are not happy with corruption and state capture.
The organizational and the expectation, yes, we are happy. But the matter that we protest is still there. So it's a long journey that we need to travel together with the society as a whole to highlight the impact, the negative impact of the state capture and the corruption. So we're happy that workers wanted to be part of that contribution to raise their voice, and I think they did very well.
Yeah, and there were also calls made, as you say, for more marches of that nature. We've also heard yourself saying that if workers are not happy with how the ANC responds to their needs, they should even take it upon themselves to march the ANC itself.
Indeed, the issue is not an event we have said, so it's going to be a process, a long process, because those who are the beneficiaries of state capture and corruption, they're going to resist. So workers understood that this is not an event. We have to march. We have to raise our voices everywhere where it matters.
Yeah. In fact, yesterday, some of your members were saying that they will not be participating at the march itself because it looks like Cosatu has shifted away from its primary mandate. Have you considered that you sort of, shifted away from representing the workers in South Africa?
Not at all, because what was happening yesterday is the mandate of the workers themselves. So from where we are, we get the mandate from the workers. We've been addressing a number of shops to a number of workplaces. Not a single one has said, no, I'm not going to be part of this particular. Precisely because workers understand that corruption will affect them most. They are going to be the first victims of any corruption. They are experiencing it through their schooling of their children, where the teacher will say, I have no instrument to teach. They experience it in the hospitals where there is no linen, there is no medication, and etc. So we will appreciate workers when they can come up and say their views in any way. We take the mandate from them, but most of our members enjoy this particular. You could have seen them in the marches. They were very, very excited that at least they're raising their voices.
Number of questions around that it will pose to some of the members of the ANC a little bit later, especially 20,000 members that were said to be marching in Mafikeng yesterday. Maikeng, some say, but we will find out about that, whether it was. In fact, did I say ANC? It was Cosatu. Now, KZN ANC says it's eagerly awaiting a decision from the National ANC on whether it should appeal the Maritzburg High Court ruling that nullified the 2015 Provincial Elective Conference or not. Speaking to SABC News earlier, KZN ANC spokesperson Mdumiseni Ntuli says that they're hoping that the decision will be made tomorrow when the ANC NEC meets. Yesterday was that deadline for the ANC to appeal the Pietermaritzburg High Court ruling.
We were all waiting with intense expectations that yesterday the National and reflect on this matter so that we can get a conclusion. We are told that, reliably informed, that the working committee did not take place yesterday. But obviously tomorrow is a standing meeting of the National Executive Committee, because remember the one that was last week was a special meeting convened to deal with the KZN question. Our view is that it's not too late. The NEC is going to convene tomorrow. And as we said before, we are Democrats and we believe in the supremacy of the National Executive Committee. Its decisions and its authority is what we are going to be implementing competently. Whatever the NEC decides will be our own decision, and we'll implement it as if it was conceptualized and decided by ourselves.
Now, We'll come back to the poll that we're running and as well as the question a little bit later, but we first want to talk to you about this new sheriff that's in town. The National Student Financial Aid Scheme, the NSFAS, they got a new sheriff. His name is Stephen Zwane. He's the new CEO. He is a seasoned executive, a business leader with over 12 years senior management experience across banking, consulting, education and training, covering strategy, operations, technology, sales and youth development programs. He holds a BSc in computer science from the University of Zululand and an MBA from Durham University. But the question is, what is the new CEO's plan for NSFAS? He's here to tell us all about it. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis. Thank you for having me.
First and foremostly, we need to congratulate you on the appointment. And how do you feel about it?
Thank you very much. I think it's an opportunity to contribute to this country. So it's really an exciting challenge, opportunity and mandate. I'm quite excited because I was a beneficiary of the scheme myself. If it wasn't because of it, I would not have been here today or even acquired my undergraduate degree. So I look at NSFAS as a legend. I'm happy to be part of it.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. The big question, though, is what are your plans for NSFAS?
So I think for me, it starts with acknowledging who NSFAS is and what NSFAS mandate is. To this day, NSFAS has made sure that up to 3 million young people are in a better situation today and are positively contributing to this country. And that's a story that has not really been told. We all focus on what's negative. We forget about these people that are making decisions today. Most of them are sitting in high-profile positions because of that same scheme. The second part of it is the fact that NSFAS has changed its mandate. We used to just disperse funds directly to universities, and universities would disperse to the students, and that was it. There was no direct relationship between NSFAS and the student. So with the implementation of the student-centered model, we now have that opportunity to build a relationship, to create a platform where we can interact directly with the students. So what is my aim? My aim is to build an organization that South Africans can be proud of. Second one is to make sure that we disperse the funds on time to the students, so that going forward, elections at university level are not won on the basis of NSFAS concessions. Thirdly is the trust that I'm trying to build with the constituencies and South Africa as a whole. That says we are a core and integral part of higher education in South Africa, and we play an important role. I'll make you one example. There are universities, particularly the previously disadvantaged universities, whose funding depends on NSFAS, because about 80, 70% and 60% depend on this funding. So we play an important role.
I want to talk to you about the student-centered model in a short while, but I first want to check with you, what are some of the challenges that you've identified that need to be addressed?
I think the issue with the 14 million is one of those. The challenge is that every time a negative story comes out, everything positive goes through the window and nobody remembers. So we want to make sure we tighten up our screws around the disbursement of the funds. So payments as a core capability for us as NSFAS is an area of focus so that we cut out opportunities for fraud. So that is a big challenge for us. The other one is being able to build the right relationship between ourselves, the students and the universities. At the moment, I think the relationships are strained. And they're strained on the basis that the student-centered model means the power moves away from just being university owning the relationship and the value proposition, and now it's a shared value proposition and relationship. The other part is, for some reason, it looks like many South Africans are scared to say, I'm a beneficiary of NSFAS, and I'm proud that I was part of that era that benefited. So I'd like South Africans to really be proud. For me, I just don't understand that you can be given an opportunity to transform your life, your family's life, move from poverty to a situation where you can afford, and still not be proud of that vehicle that enabled you. So I'd love to see pride in that institution.
Stand up and be counted.
Absolutely.
And count for yourself. There's others that need to follow in your footsteps.
Absolutely.
But let's talk about the opportunity to minimize fraud.
Yep.
Why is there a funding agency like NSFAS having a company that distributes funds?
I think it's two ways to look at it, Elvis. One is, for the longest time, we only distributed money to universities. It was up to universities to then disburse the money to the students. The implementation of the student-centered model meant NSFAS had to build the capability to be able to disburse directly. And we are not ready for that sort of context from a capability and a capacity point of view. So at the moment, we built our own model called SPARKS. It is that platform that we use to distribute to students. At the moment, we've got 5 universities in that platform and 13 TVETs. Now, we want to roll that model to all universities, all 26 of them, to all TVETs, all 50 of them. And we are now getting it right. I suppose the board decided that a banker would be better placed to do this, because I come from banking, and I think that's the only industry I've worked in the last many years. And I sort of understand the intricacies, the need to protect a license in the way you disperse your funds. Payment is an integral part of banking, and it's an integral part of what we do. It is my responsibility to put the processes, the systems in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. So let's come back. How then are we going to do this? Firstly, we're going to go for the low-hanging fruit. The universities with the highest number of beneficiaries from NSFAS, we want to go for those. So we want to move from a number 5 to a number 9 in the next year, and then over the next 3 years, make sure that all of them are integrated into our platform. In that way, we'll minimize that fraud.
We talked about people standing up and be counted in relation to what they received from NSFAS in previous years. How do you plan to do that? Because some of them still owe you money.
Yeah, of course. So I always start from a point of I'm a banker, which means most of the time people want to give to someone they trust. I don't think we've done enough to earn the trust. Before, NSFAS had a Section 23 in its act, which allowed us to place garnishee orders in your companies and then get the money directly without your consent. With NCR coming on board over the last 3 years, we can't do that. So we rely on the consciousness that you have to say, please pay back the money. The other point to it is we've appointed collection agencies that are really helping us, and we've seen good momentum in recent times. I think with the Section 23, we used to raise up to 800 million per year. I think that went down to about 200 million when that section was out. But for me, here's the big driver. I would like to put a human face into NSFAS. A human face are those individuals whose lives have been transformed by the scheme. And then when they start seeing, when the public starts seeing the impact, start having the positive stories, I think it will be that basis where if you want to contribute to NSFAS, you don't have to have benefited from it, please contribute. The other one is, if you know you've benefited, please give somebody else a chance to benefit. And that's what we're trying to do, and we want people to give back. So we want to conversate with South Africans. We want them to be part of this campaign. We believe this campaign will be the beginning of Stand Up, Be Counted. I want to give back so that somebody else can benefit.
Mr. Zwane, we got a lot of talking to do, but we've run out of time. But we're going to be in touch with NSFAS all the time to talk about this issue. It is a national asset. We need to protect it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That was NSFAS CEO Stephen Zwane talking to us about his plans for the organization and how he plans to recover money that's owed to NSFAS. Are you one of those guilty ones? It's time to repent and pay your money. Well, let's move on now. There's other news. Cabinet is deliberating on how to save South African Airways, that's SAA, from its latest cash crisis after at least one creditor insisted it be paid by this Saturday. Treasurer Director General Dondo Mokhajani says that SAA has to pay back Citibank 1.8 billion rand by the end of September. In total, SAA owes almost 7 billion rand in debt that has to be paid by the end of the month. In July, government had to provide it with over 2 billion rand from an emergency fund to pay what it owed to Standard Chartered. Mokhajani says that negotiations with lenders may lessen the amount. SAA needs 13 billion rand. That's the bailout they need over the next 3 years. The Democratic Alliance has urged President Jacob Zuma to immediately appoint a new SABC board. The deadline for the president to sign off on the new board expired on Tuesday, and the term of the interim board ended on the same day. Earlier this month, the National Assembly recommended 12 names to serve on the board, and these are being considered by the president. The DA's call for confirmation of the new board comes in the wake of the SABC's annual report, which showed a loss of 977 million rand. Treasury is considering the SABC's request for a bailout or perhaps a guarantee. The 5 men accused of cannibalism are today expected to be back in the Escort Magistrates Court in KwaZulu-Natal. The The five, including a traditional healer, face charges of murder and conspiracy to commit murder. It's alleged that the men raped and killed a woman and cut up her body, which they then consumed. 4 of them were arrested on August the 18th after one of them allegedly walked into the police station where he told officers that he was tired of eating human flesh. Now, sentencing proceedings in the rape case of Kwaito star Sipho Ndlovu, who is known as Brickz, are underway at the Roodepoort Magistrates Court today. Sentencing was postponed 2 weeks ago when his lawyer told the court that he needed transcripts and pre-sentencing reports from a private probation officer. Now, after a long legal battle, Brickz was found guilty in July this year of raping a 16-year-old girl at his home in November 2013. His bail of 50,000 rand was revoked after the conviction. Moving abroad now, the United Nations Entity for Women has welcomed a decision by Saudi Arabia to allow women to drive cars. The announcement by the Saudi king ends a conservative tradition seen by rights activists as an emblem of the Islamic kingdom's repression of women.
It's a move that will change the lives of millions of women, after rights activists for more than 2 decades have fought to have the ban on women driving lifted.
You may be interested to know that a few minutes ago, a royal decree has been issued in Saudi Arabia giving women the right to drive. This is a historic day for Saudi society, for men and women, and we can now say at last.
The UN has welcomed the move but tempered its congratulations.
We hope that this also means that more substantive rights are going to follow. And as the United Nations and as UN Women, we are ready to support and to encourage them to take the next and bigger steps.
Saudi Arabia still has a number of laws viewed as discriminatory towards women, including guardian laws that require the consent of a man, often a father, brother, or even a son, to do a range of things, including traveling abroad, getting married, or having a medical procedure as examples. Amnesty International is among human rights groups calling for the guardianship laws to be swept away.
كانت توصيات واضحة.
This activist and journalist in Saudi Arabia says they've been demanding the right to drive for a long time, beginning in 1990. She thanks God that they now have reaped the fruits of those demands with these successful reforms.
However, in my family, if they wish to drive, they will drive. It's their right. You cannot prohibit them from that. We've been asking the women to be a part of the developing of this country, so at least give them the tool. Not the tool, at least the right itself.
The UN Secretary General also weighed in, calling it a move in the right direction. Sherwin Brycepease, SABC News, New York.
Now, tributes are pouring in for the self-styled American icon and Playboy founder Hugh Hefner, who died of natural causes at the age of 91. Hefner helped to usher in the 1960s sexual revolution with his groundbreaking men's magazine and built a business empire around his lifestyle. The multimillionaire was also a political activist and a philanthropist, active in several causes and public issues. There he is in his Playboy mansion. Well, there you have it. Now, today we focus on economic crimes committed against you and I, the South African public, and we want to find out from you, how do we deal with this? Let's take a look at our poll today. First, our question rather, how should we deal with economic crimes in South Africa? That's the question we pose to you. Let's take a look at what you are telling us. On the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on our Facebook page, Lachasa Batlamolo says, we don't have SAPs, NPA, Hawks anymore, but only corrupt officials. That's Lachasa Batlamolo, his take on it. Let's see if we continue. There's one from Dipanso. Dipanso says, it's treason, absolute treason, stealing money from the poor. That's what Advocate Paul Hoffman said earlier. Remember Steve Biko, Adam ITV says, economic crimes must be prosecuted so that criminals realize that crime does not pay. We support the People's Tribunal. Now, picking up on that theme for today, economic crimes, the Black First, Land First BLF has rejected that recently launched People's Tribunal on Economic Crime in South Africa with what they call the highest contempt it deserves. BLF has also criticized organizations behind the formation of the tribunal. The organization will today march to KPMG to register their dissatisfaction with the company. Black First Land First National Secretary for Political Education, Neo Makatsanyane, joins us now in studio. Neo, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Morning, my brother Elvis.
First and foremostly, why are you against the newly established People's Tribunal on Economic Crimes in South Africa? Is that not something that's long overdue?
No, first and foremost, we reject the People's Tribunal on Economic Crimes because it's just a cover-up for the lynching, a public lynching of black people in the name of regime change organizations, pro-imperialist and neoliberal organizations such as South African Council of Churches and other organizations such as Corruption Watch, and also they are under the banner of Save South Africa. So this is just for public lynching. They are not concerned about the real issues that affect black people or the condition of black people. They just want to defend the looting of white monopoly capital. So we totally reject that tribunal. And also we reject that tribunal on basis that it does not ask the fundamental questions that deal with the primary contradiction. And right now in South Africa, the primary contradiction is our landlessness, because our landlessness characterizes what we are subjected to as the black majority in South Africa.
You say that they want to protect and defend white monopoly capital, but what they are saying is it's a people's tribunal that is going to look into crimes of economic crimes going back even 40 years. Is that not perhaps something that you should think should be addressed?
No, these people are propagandists, because we need to ask ourselves, this tribunal, it serves the interest of the ruling class. Now, when we look at the interest of the ruling class in South Africa, which is white monopoly capital, we need to ask ourselves, can the interest of the ruling class and the interest of the proletariat, which is the black majority, can it be reconcilable? We believe in the Black First Land First that the interest of the ruling class and the interest of the oppressed are irreconcilable. This is just a smokescreen to confuse the people and to fool the nation, because we all know that there are role players that are against radical economic transformation.
But what is your stance on economic crimes in South Africa? Do you have a stand against it?
Economic crimes in South Africa, first and foremost, we need to also understand that the biggest or mother of all economic crimes in South Africa is land dispossession. That is the mother of all economic crimes. So before we can speak about any secondary or symptoms of the primary cause, we need to look at the land question, first and foremost, because it is through the landlessness that we black people are at the bottom of society today. So any tribunal or any pseudo-tribunal that does not address or talk directly to the land question, it's a total waste of time that is meant to confuse the people and push its agenda of making Guptas and President Zuma as if they are the cause of all this crisis.
But if we see what's currently happening in the country, companies like KPMG being put in the spotlight, of course there's all these economic crimes being ventilated in the Gupta emails. Don't you think that that's important?
You know what, I hear these emails, you know, first and foremost, you also need to ask ourselves, if your immediate enemy had evidence against you, shouldn't your immediate enemy prosecute you on that very moment? So they speak about these emails and these evidence. Where are they? Why aren't they bringing them forth? Yes.
Let's now get your stand clear on state capture, all right, as well as corruption. The very issue of the Cosatu marches yesterday. Do you think that that is something that needs to be supported?
No. First and foremost, Cosatu is an agent, they are now agents of white monopoly capital. Cosatu is using tabloid-based politics. They're not addressing issues from a Marxist perspective as a workers' or organization or workers' union. And we need to also look at the issue that Cosatu is not saying anything about real issues that are affecting black people. Like, what are they saying about the 20,000 job losses in the mining sector? Cosatu, they like the biblical Pharisees. They're very hypocritical. All that they're pushing there is their interest to push their candidate, which is Ramaphosa.
Now, Black first, land first. Are you a political party? Are you a pressure group or an interest group? Or what role do you play in the South African political landscape?
We are a black consciousness anti-imperialist organization. We are an organization that puts black people first. Hence, we say black first, land first. It is through the land question, it is through land first that we can put black people first. Any other politics that does not centralize the land question is simply a waste of time, because we are a dispossessed people. And all of this is linked to the land question, which is the biggest corruption.
So, how, and in closing, how do we then address economic crimes as well as financial illicit outflows, which runs into 100 billions of rands in this country and in the continent on an annual basis?
First and foremost, we need to have a commission of inquiry. And we need to have radical economic transformation, land expropriation. That is the only way that we can have accountability. Because the state, and also this issue of state capture, there's no contemporary state capture. There's no point in time that the state has never been captured at all. The state has always been captured. 1994 never changed the ordering of things. So in order to address this in depth, we also need to go back to the context. Our people do not know the context. And the reason why is because the dominant ideas in society are the ideas of the ruling class. So they are perpetuating as if, or presupposing that the state capture is something new, it's something that came after 1994. And that is not the case. There's always been state capture since 1652, and the state was used to dispossess of our land and also force us into wage slavery.
Should the land question be addressed from 1962 or 1913?
Should be addressed from 1652. We should go back to the source, to the root of things.
I agree with you that fully. Thank you so much, Neo. That's Neo. He is coming from the BLF, Black First, Land First, the Secretary for Political Education, Neo Makatsanyane. Well, we'll take a short break, but remember there's that question we posed to you. I'd like you to take a look at that question and tweet us your comment. Do you think that this can be solved, economic crimes in South Africa? Let me know what's on your mind. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
After a horrific accident, major questions were asked.
So step one, I asked myself, do I really want to die? And my answer to that was, I'm not sure. And then step two was, do I want my parents to bury me? And the answer to that was no.
Learning kept his brain in full action on how the brain works.
When I was in hospital, right, as I was saying, to catch up with my peers, I started to become obsessed with memory techniques and how the brain works and how we retain information.
Touching lives is his continuous mission.
I now work for a non-profit where we deal with access issues regarding kids with disabilities and persons with disability. We're busy working on beach access.
Being wheelchair-bound did not stop fun in his life.
I party in a wheelchair, I laugh in a wheelchair, I smile in a wheelchair.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday.
Well, a very good morning and welcome to AM News Live at 1000 hours across all Central Africa regions.
A fitting send-off for a revolutionary giant, a life dedicated in service of the people.
The result means that Swallows are out of the ABC Municipal League and drop to the amateur fourth tier of South African football, the SAB League.
Tune in on AM News every Saturday and Sunday from 10 hours.
Cosatu will from today sit down to assess the impact of the nationwide marches that took place in more than 10 cities across the country yesterday. It was almost 13. Now, the giant Labour Federation says that workers understand that corruption and state capture are affecting them the most. Yesterday, the Gauteng Premier, David Makura, announced that the province decided to do away with labour brokers before the end of the year. Cosatu Deputy General Secretary Solid Petwe now joins us in studio to talk to us about the marches yesterday. Very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning to the listeners.
Your assessment of what happened yesterday, the nationwide marches, was it a success?
Yes, no, from where we stand as Cosatu, nationally this march was a success. Workers came in numbers with also the supporters of the communities who believe that this issue of the state capture and corruption, it does affect the workers, it does affect the community in terms of service deliveries.
The target was 100,000 people across the country. Was that achieved?
Well, from where we stand, we think that we were nearly to 100,000. I think from the assessment that we made in all the 13 marches, we can talk about 70 to 80% of the workers who attended to the march, including the supporters of the community, as I said.
Now, we covered the entire country yesterday with rolling coverage of the marches, and we went to Maikeng at one stage, and there was 5 marches there, but they said they're expecting 20,000. What was the count at the end of the Maikeng march?
Well, Maikeng march, it was close to 20 to 25,000. I was there, I led the march there. Even at the time when we were at the legislature, we were supposed to hand over the memorandum to the Premier, who was not there. We still had some workers from the stadium who were still traveling to the marches, to the venue where we were going to hand over the memorandum. So we were happy. We were happy with the attendance of the workers.
Now, trade union NUMSA says that these were just marches in desperation, which will achieve nothing on issues that's protesting against state capture, as well as corruption and job losses. What do you say to them?
Well, when I spoke yesterday, even when I have been moving around as the national office bearers of Cosatu, we have been saying we are not going to be allowed to be defocused. And we allow NUMSA that NUMSA must focus on its responsibility to build its union as much as Cosatu is continuing to build itself. And we think the march of yesterday does address issues of workers. For example, I think we have just said that the Premier of the Gauteng, he has confirmed that one of the demands that Cosatu demanded to ban the labour brokers by the end of this year, all labour brokers in Gauteng would be banned. It's an achievement, it's a victory for us as Cosatu, because most of the government department, they do have labour brokers, and workers are being exploited, are being paid peanuts. So we think that is an achievement for us as Cosatu. We know that we're still having to we're waiting for a response within 14 days. After 14 days, we are going to assess which provinces, which government has responded. If they have not responded, we are going to take another action. For example, for the Northwest, we have not handed over the memorandum. So we still have another Section 77 certificate that allows workers to go to the protector strike before the end of October. We are going to go back to the Premier of the Northwest in terms of the attitude for disrespecting the workers.
Now, NUMSA also indicated that yesterday's march was not really about corruption. It was not about job losses. It was more about the candidate that you are supporting, CR17. Thoughts?
Well, they have that right to say whatever they want to say, but I think we spoke at the end of the handing of the memorandum. That's when we spoke about the issue of politics. I mean, NUMSA has been there for many years. In fact, NUMSA was part of the foundation, the founder of Cosatu. They were there, they knew what was the relationship, what is the relationship between the trade union movement, in particular the federation and the political party in the ANC. What have we achieved between the politics in the ANC? So we did spoke about our candidates yesterday, but that was not the main issue. In our memorandum, there is nothing about Cyril Ramaphosa. But when we addressed, we did say something about our candidates.
We've also seen placards that's indicated that Zuma must go. How does that impact then on the tripartite alliance, the SACP, the ANC, as well as Cosatu, as the Labour Federation?
Well, it does impact, because before we go to publicly, we had already engaged the African National Congress. For example, ourselves as Cosatu, when we took that decision that Zuma must step down, we wrote a letter to the ANC explaining to the ANC how did we come to that conclusion at the Central Executive Committee and the Central Committee, which is the biggest structure between the Congress and the Central Executive Committee. With no acknowledgement from the ANC, we did inform them that we are going ahead because we wanted to explain to you why do we think that Zuma must step down. And from then, there's not been convening of the alliance meeting, both the secretariat alliance meeting, the political council. In fact, when we were at the Central Committee, we had agreed that on the 4th and the 5th of June, we were going to have a political council. We were told on the 11th hour that that political council is cancelled because President Jacob Zuma is unavailable. Until today, there's no, obviously it does impact. But if the ANC is serious, they should come back and engage us. And last week, before we went to the national strike, Cosatu and the party, we had our joint political, bilateral. In that meeting, we said we are going to ask the ANC to convene the secretariat alliance meeting, to convene the political council. If they failed, if they refuse, or they just remain silent, we will convene it and invite the ANC and discuss the challenges that the alliance is facing in this country.
Do you think that the ANC is at war with itself in the run-up to the elective conference in December?
Yes, definitely. You see what is happening in province in relation to taking each individual to court. Branches of the ANC, regionals of the ANC are taking each themselves to court.
And do you still see the need for a tripartite alliance in that environment?
Sorry?
Do you still see the need for the tripartite alliance?
From where we stand, I think that is why we said the tripartite alliance is still needed, it's still important for the workers. That is why we've chosen Cyril to be the president. We think that is the man that we can be able to unify the alliance.
Mr. Petwe, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thank you very much.
That was Cosatu's Deputy General Secretary Solo Petwe here in studio talking about the issues and, of course, economic crimes. We'll ask you the question, we'll look at the comments a little bit later, but right now, Kendall Bakamate is standing by with your sports news.
Elvis, thank you very much. Good morning to you. Yes, it's time for the sports. And South Africa starts its home summer today with a new coach at the helm, Barbadian Otis Gibson. First up, a test series against Bangladesh. The venue is Senves in Potchefstroom. South Africa has confirmed that Themba Bavuma starts at number 4. Aiden Macron makes his long-awaited debut as opening partner for Dean Ailgar, and Andy Lupet-Lukwayo as the all-rounder at number 7. Let's take live commentary from Senves to see how things have been going.
Back at Senves Park in Potchefstroom, as we look at the South African dressing room, they'll be happy with the start. It's been measured. Got the debutant alongside Elgar. South Africa 29 without loss after 11. It was really windy when we got here this morning. Totally different conditions now. Heavy overcast. It actually looked like it was going to rain before play.
Yeah, it was ominous, wasn't it? The clouds were really low, and it was those thick grey clouds that look as if they've got buckets of water in them. And then the wind sort of, I think, just blew them away, and the sun has just been able to come out and sort of just brighten up the day. I know I brightened up yours and many people's, but we always accept the sun now and again, don't we, Cass?
It's going to be a long summer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there you have it. Treated to some very interesting shots of Otis Gibson there, having a chat with Dr. Mohamed Moussaji as well as Captain Faf du Plessis. We'll be bringing you more of those updates as we go on throughout the day. Now, we'll go to UEFA Champions League, where there were goals galore in last night's second round of UEFA Champions League group matches. In some of the matches, Manchester United won 4-1 at CSKA Moscow. Basel beat Benfica 5-0, while Bayern Munich suffered a 3-0 loss against Paris Saint-Germain.
Thiago Alcantara, and there goes Neymar again. Neymar with the ball across, what a chance! And PSG have the first goal. Dani Alves has fired them in front.
PSG were all over Bayern from the word goal in a Group B clash in Paris. Dani Alves' goal was followed by a sweeping counter-attack with a sublime finish by Edison Cavani.
From Martinez, and there's Cavani!
In the second half, Neymar pounced on a loose ball inside Bayern's penalty area and made it 3-0 to PSG.
And Neymar's got his goal.
Manchester United maintained their unbeaten record in Moscow, with Romelu Lukaku continuing his good start to life at the club.
Looking for Lukaku!
Anthony Martial made it 2 to United from the penalty spot. 26 minutes into the match, Lukaku tapped in his 10th goal in 9 matches this season.
And he's got it! Oh, completely missed by Berezutski. Martial.
Henrik Mkhitaryan scored the 4th before a late consolation by Moscow.
Oh, that's nice. Kuchayev!
Juventus were at home to Olympiacos and had to wait until the second half to find the back of the net, thanks to substitute Gonzalo Higuain. Olympiacos put on a brave fight, but Mario Mandzukic scored Juve's second goal to give last season's runners-up a 2-0 win. Chelsea came back from a goal down to beat Atletico Madrid 2-1 in Spain's capital city. The Wanda Metropolitano Stadium was silenced as Belgian substitute Michi Batshuayi scored the winner deep into stoppage time.
Chelsea have won it with virtually the last kick. Being hassled by Ndlovu and he's lost it. And Ndlovu has picked a good pass.
In other matches, Bafana Bafana's Dino Ndlovu provided an assist as Karabakh lost 2-1 at home to Roma.
By the Brazilian. There's the work from the South Africans.
Barcelona beat Sporting Lisbon 1-0 and Anderlecht suffered a 3-0 loss at home to Celtic. Mduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Now, Banyana legend and caretaker coach Desiree Ellis will remain part of the team's setup and might be appointed as assistant coach when the South African Football Association announces the head coach of the senior women's team. When Banyana won the Cosatu Women's Championship in Zimbabwe on Sunday, it was expected that the association would just simply appoint Ellis on a permanent basis. But SAFA Chief Executive Dennis Mumble says Ellis was among the 3 shortlisted candidates for the position and will be given a role in the setup.
Banyana walking through the OR Tambo International Arrivals Terminal with a trophy on Monday was a rare sighting. It's not often that national football teams return from abroad with trophies to show off. The team won the COSAFA Cup the previous day with Desiree Ellis, who had won the cup as player at the helm. But that doesn't seem to have convinced the powers that be that she has what it takes to be appointed on a permanent basis.
She was one of 3 of the coaches that were interviewed for the head coach position. We have said that we needed to now go and negotiate with the coaches in order the selection was made by the panel. One, clearly, it didn't work out for us. Now we're coaching with the we're negotiating with the second one. So hopefully, very soon, I don't want to give a specific date, but very soon we'll have a Banyana head coach.
The association has hinted in the past that it has cast its net wide, implying that a foreign coach is favored for the position. Mumble says they intend appointing someone with a better pedigree who will also be tasked with grooming a local coach for the position.
One of the criteria for whoever it is that we're discussing with, they must make sure that they train South African coaches to take over from them. There's no doubt about that. It is part of the contract that they must produce and develop those coaches whilst they are in charge here, if we go for a foreign coach.
Meanwhile, the draw for the annual Sticks Morewa Soccer Challenge was conducted in Soweto with 56 senior teams to compete in the tournament that starts on Sunday. Pesinkatlu, SABC News, Soweto.
Well, I had the pleasure of chatting to Desiree Ellis the other night, and the COSAFA Championship winning coach says the next step is to qualify for the 2018 Women's AFCON and then ultimately the World Cup. I asked her about how it felt having won it as a player and now as a coach. This is what she had to say.
It's so far apart, the winning it as a player was in 2002, and now it's 15 years later. It doesn't feel the same, but I think this time around it's special because you're working with a special group of players, and if you look at what it's transpired throughout the tournament, coming back and all of that, I think it makes it more special because we played not just for ourselves, but we played for everyone back home.
All right, now here's the thing. I mean, like you've said previously that you're working with a special group of players. Can you please elaborate on what you mean by that?
Well, you know, the togetherness, the unity, the caring and the sharing about each other and looking out for each other, you know, with the senior players taking the lead. And I call them special because, you know, they were so united, and I think that transcended onto the pitch when the going was tough. They stuck together, everybody pulled their weight. You brought in the senior players to stabilize the team, and they also pulled their weight. The newer players came in, and you couldn't really see the difference, and they fought for each other and, you know, wanting that medal, because in the group we had 3 players who had a gold medal from the previous championship, and that was Noko Maklo, that was Notando Vilakazi, and Chantal Issau. So even though the captain, Rafil Vejani, has been with the national team since 2012, she didn't have a medal, and others had been with the team prior to that, had silver, like Andile. So for this group, they really wanted it badly. And I said to them that no one knows what's going to happen in the future, and make your mark, raise your profile, and you know, if there's one thing that you leave with, is cherishing a gold medal. And from the word go, we didn't start off that well, but as the tournament got, you know, got to the latter stages, they really showed their true quality, and they showed how special they were.
Tell you what, the one match that sticks out for a lot of us back home was that semi-final against Zambia. Because I think a lot of people were lucky. It's a done deal. 3-0 down. The match is about to be over, and that's it. You know, well done, ladies. Come back home, heads held high. But you had other plans. Tell us about that.
Well, I didn't have other plans. You know, we didn't play that well in the first half, and we spoke about 3 things. We spoke about not diving in. We spoke about marking, and we spoke about cover, and we didn't do those 3 things in conceding the 2 goals in the first half. So we got to the dressing room, and the assistant coach, Tina Sonke, and I stood outside, and I said, just give me a moment to just calm down a bit, because I need to get the right words out. And, you know, it was a different kind of team talk where I went out and I said to them, look, we didn't play well, but let's do it for the people back home. Let's do it for Cecil, who's just renewed their sponsorship. Let's do it for Safa, who supported us, for the coaches that have brought you here, for your parents, your siblings, you know. Let's go out there and do it for them. And obviously, let's go out and play for the badge. And I said, if anyone here feels that they can't go out and do the job, you know, we can replace you with someone else. And they all raised their hand. And then we went 3 down. And, you know, Rafil Vejani was saying, she looked at the clock, and it was 72 minutes. And we just knew that if we get 1 back, you know, we'll get a second, we'll get a third, because this group of players, they have a never-say-die attitude. They showed against Namibia in the second half, when the going was tough, playing back-to-back matches. They showed the resilience, they showed the mental strength, and coming back with 15 minutes to go, that is what makes them so special.
Now, with what you've done, and it's not the first time that South Africa wins the COSAFA Cup, but how do we capitalize on what you as a group have managed to do? And as you get women's football out of the doldrums that it finds itself in and get it the attention that it so rightly deserves, what do we need to do as a nation and as a football-loving fans?
Well, we were fortunate that over the last 2.5 years, we played the likes of the Netherlands. We played the #1 country in the world at that time, the USA. We then went to the Olympics and, you know, played top countries, went to AFCON, didn't really do that well there through, you know, lack of scoring goals. We then had the opportunity to play the #3 country in the world, and that is France. And then, fortunately, we got this opportunity to go to the COSAFA Cup. And I think going forward, we need to utilize the FIFA dates to get the group together, to bring in more players, to get the best possible group to prepare for next year, which is AFCON qualifiers, and then the big one, which is the 2080 AFCON in Ghana. And the top 3 of that competition then goes to the World Cup. So the ultimate aim is obviously to win it. And if you fall short, you make sure then that you get one of the 3 places to go to the World Cup. And then, with all due respect, going to the World Cup and not just playing in the group stages, but to get out of the group stages would be the ultimate, you know, ultimate aim or objective for the national team. And I think the culture that's in the team now, the never-say-die attitude, you know, the togetherness, the looking out for each other, the caring and the sharing, it's almost an attitude of gratitude that you actually grateful that you're here, grateful that you're representing your country. I think that needs to stay within the team.
Now, very quickly before we let you go, Tiger Woods has got for the first time public acknowledged that what's been a long whispered in golfing circles that he might never return to competitive golf.
Do you see a scenario where you would not come back to competitive golf?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know what my future holds for me. All I've told you guys, I'm hitting 60-yard shots. But, you know, overall, I'm very optimistic about how I'm progressing. As I said, the pain's gone, but I don't know what my golfing body is going to be like because I haven't hit a golf shot yet. And so that's going to take time to figure that out and figure out what my capabilities are going forward. And there's no rush.
So Tiger Woods has won no less than 14 majors and has held the #1 spot for a record 683 years. That's some 13 years that he was the best golfer in the world. We'll take a short break, couple of minutes time. We'll be back top of the hour. You're watching Newsroom.
All right, we talk about a healthy lifestyle, but what is this healthy lifestyle?
What we're talking about really is you are healthy in those 3 areas of life: body, mind, and soul.
Before you embark on a weight loss journey, rather first speak to your person who has your complete clinical picture.
Ideally, your plate should look like this. Half of your plate should be fruit and vegetables. A quarter of your plate, starch. Quarter protein.
Show you some of the things that I really enjoy doing for that bottom pouch as well as for cardio. So you do your kicks, you kick back.
Join Health Talk every Saturday for all your health news.
Jumbo Africa. This is the final hour here on the Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin.
I'm Kendo Makamate.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Now, today we focus on the Western Cape High Court, who gave Parliament 18 months, Kendall, only 18 months, to force them to disclose private funding.
More than enough time for them to get their story straight and make sure that we all know where their money is coming from.
Yes, it's all looking for the money. So that's why we're asking you this question on the poll. Will the disclosure of political funding assist in fighting corruption?
Well, we've got 303 votes in so far, and yeah, pretty even as to what it was previously. 2/3, 67% say yes, it will help, whereas a third say no, not necessarily.
Yeah, but you're also tweeting us on the question. Let's take a look. This one coming from Jamila van der Skyf says, it would help to show the citizens what the government is doing to stop corruption.
Memani says, not at all, hey. Whoever funds any political party has the right to remain anonymous. Funders, it's their rights. They have the power to remain anonymous, Memani reckons.
The question is, if you are a straight arrow, why would you want to be anonymous? Question. But, of course, we're also focusing on the tribunal, the newly established People's Tribunal on Economic Crime in South Africa. They seek to join the dots, connect the dots over the past 4 decades. Now, it's a huge mandate, really, to make sure that they can stem apartheid-era economic crimes from the 1999 arms deal and the contemporary state capture that we've seen.
Yes, and everything before as well. Remember those our bank deals that will be done with the previous Reserve Bank before the advent of democracy? Well, we want to find out what happened there. And we're asking you, how should we deal with economic crimes?
You are tweeting us on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. Let's take a look.
Mission says it's from municipal level up to national. That's why there's an increase of crimes and strikes.
This one coming from Remember Steve Biko says the biggest economic crime was the dispossession of land and the mineral wealth of the people due to colonialism since 1652. That's exactly my point, Remember Steve Biko, when Jan van Riebeeck landed with his pals at the Cape with 3 ships, a gun and a Bible.
You've got an axe to grind.
And the rest is history.
You've got an axe to grind. Good morning to you. We're also talking about Safa. We're talking about Desiree Ellis and her appointment as the Banyana coach. Do you think she needs to be appointed as a permanent coach? What do you say?
I tell you, listening to her earlier, I can tell you that she's ready to be the coach, eh?
She is. She's got the goods. I mean, that's my opinion at least. But let's see what's being said by you at home.
Well, Mervyn Macha says, is she not the coach yet? Well, she's standing in, right? What do they call her?
She's interim coach.
Interim coach. If not, who else are there other than Desiree Ellis?
My point exactly, Mervyn. Jarvis Jen says, she's delivered the results. Naturally, she was the first to be appointed. Well, we were thinking the same as well, but it seems as if SAFA is going through a process, which they should, and it might not be Desiree Ellis.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. But right now, let's take a look at what's happening in your headlines. Parliament confirms that it has started looking at an alternative auditing firm to do its work. Political parties react differently to yesterday's judgment of the High Court that gave Parliament 18 months to force political parties to disclose private funding that happened in the Western Cape. And Cosatu expresses confidence that yesterday's anti-corruption marches achieved its purpose. Those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendo Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Obviously, a little earlier we had a look at what was happening out in Potchefstroom. First test for the South African home summer. Well, I want to jump back in there quickly again, just so you can see what is happening. Last when we looked, it was Makram and Elgar at the crease. Let's see if there's been a difference. 1, in how many runs we've gotten. 2, who's at the crease. As you can see, 58 for no loss after 15 overs. Let's take live commentary to hear what the commentators are saying about what's going on there. Probably taking a quick drinks break, and it seems like it's a bit of a lull in the action, but we'll definitely be going back there at 11:35. I'm sure we'll be seeing a whole lot more balls being delivered and runs being scored. This is what else we've got for you in the sports a little later.
That were interviewed for the head coach position.
SAFA might choose to reward triumphant COSAFA Cup coach Desiree Ellis with an assistant coach post rather than a widely expected top job.
Mbappe, what a touch! He's got it across and it's in, and Neymar's got his goal.
Neymar and Cavani seem to have patched up the on-field differences as they combined with teenage star Kylian Mbappe to destroy Bayern Munich by 3-0 in the Champions League group stage match last night. This in more detail, 11:35. Stick around, Elvis has got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour, the annual National Tourism Career Expo, or the NTCE, starts in earnest today in Bloemfontein. More than 10,000 learners, tourism students, graduates and educators will descend on the expo under the theme, Tourism Alive with Opportunities. Now, the expo is designed to empower thousands of learners across the country with information on tourism as a career choice through funding opportunities such as learnerships, internships, bursaries and life skills programs. Now, for more on this, we now cross live to our reporter in Bloemfontein, Palesa Moeti. Palesa, very good morning to you. Can you tell us more about the expo and what is happening there?
Good morning, Elvis. We are at the Performing Arts Center of the Free State, known as PACOFS, here in Bloemfontein, for, as you said, the National Tourism Career Expo. Now, this Career Expo started back in 2008 in KZN. It was hosted in that province for 3 years. It then moved to the Eastern Cape for another 3 years. It's now in its third and final year in the Free State. Next day, it will be going to another province, but that normally happens because there's a bid process that has to happen. Now, as you said correctly, there'll be about 10,000 students from undergraduate level, as well as learners from high schools around the country that will be coming here, as well as industry experts. They'll be exposing these learners and students to various career options in the tourism industry. Now, we'll be also joined by the Deputy Minister of Tourism later today, just to take us through what exactly is expected, in the next 3 days as this tourism expo gets underway. There's thousands of exhibitors, just around 100 exhibitors from the industry that are exhibiting their various products and services. In fact, Elvis, the Deputy Minister, has just joined us. It's Deputy Minister Elizabeth Tabete of the Department of Tourism. Minister, thank you very much for joining us. Just take us through what is expected in this National Tourism Expo throughout the week.
Well, it is held over 3 days, to be precise, but it can then spill to 4 or 5 days. The National Tourism Exhibition Expo, it's held over these days because we bring about students from all over the country, plus minus 9,000 to 10,000, that will be here within the 3 days, giving each other a chance to come and experiment and see what is it that we have in the tourism industry, and largely also to the value chain of what you can get, but also just to see in action what is it all about to own facilities and the opportunities that exist there, especially for young people. We've got programs such as the Buddies program. I'm sure most of the people do know about it now, where we train young chefs from grade 12. We give a chance to the grade 9s in terms of the food security training and all that. But we've got that chefs program, which is a very successful chefs program. We've just recently, in 2-3 months with the minister, graduated more than 1,510 young learners who were not able to get opportunities to go to tertiary. Some had, but then they did not have the experience. In this training, we work together with the private sector, who happens to be your hotels, especially Hilton and that Southern Sun, as well as the Sand Parks, where they have the parks. We then train them. 70% of this training is practical, 30% is theory. It gives them then a chance to be absorbed by the industry because they're already trained. Some of them professional pastry chefs, some of them they deal with your French cuisine, etc., and all that. And we train them from zero, not knowing anything in terms of this. And also, if you remember, chefs are a scarce skill, not in South Africa, globally, internationally. So some of them then after training, they get an opportunity to work abroad. As I said yesterday at the Kruger National Park in the morning, we've got one good role model, trained from this program of the chefs program. Is Mbele, the surname, she comes from Umlazi. After training, she got an opportunity to go and work in the US. She worked for the whole year, saved money, those dollars. And to my surprise, she touched me a lot as a 23-year-old professional pastry chef, as she calls herself, and she is indeed. She then came back and bought a mother house in Umlazi. So you can see that there are young people who are thinking for the good things and also as change agents. She never thought about buying expensive car, Lamborghini or Ferrari, the expensive car, but she felt that she must be able to buy a mother house. She helped us as government then to make sure that she can fulfill that. So you've got those young chefs that we trained out of these programs, and some of them came to this particular exhibition and expo to see what we do, what we offer in the industry, and working together with the industry. I must say that it is a successful program. If we had more money, I think we'd train much more students, but at least this is one. But we also have the beach stewards, where we train young people, to know how to swim first. Secondly, some of them become lifesavers. Some of them become the ambassadors of the Blue Flag program in terms of the beach and all that. Some of them are tourist guides that we train from nowhere, nothing, but then they happen to be tourist guides who are really, making a difference now as tourist guide registered, and they're able to do money out of that. So these are the young programs we have in the department, especially for you, because as you know, In South Africa, most of the unemployed happens amongst the 27.7 figure from the first quarter of 2017. Maybe the figure has changed now. The majority of those happens to be young people. So as a department, then we felt that it is important then to embark on such programs that we come and showcase here. Some of it, I'm sure some will be, cooking, some will be baking, some will be here to say this is what we do. But the NTC is all about that. And the Free State hosted for 3 years. This is their last year. And we hope to go to the next province. The adjudication process is still, taking place. We won't say which province we're going to give this to, but it has made a difference in terms of the 3 years that, Free State hosted. And we are grateful as a department that we partnered with them. And of course, the KZN, because this is a tripartite type of an alliance that we're able to really change the lives of so many young people. Career guidance in our country is still a problem, especially for children who attend public schools. They don't have that so that they can know what happens. So in this expo, we try and expose a lot of this to say, if you don't want to be a manager, if you don't want to be a person who cooks, if you don't want to do, there are also other opportunities. Grab those opportunities within the value chain so that you are a good, and also they must then assist us as government to be ambassadors of tourism so that we can be able to inculcate in them the culture of tourism while they are still young, so that as they grow older and all that. And amongst those that we trained, 20 of those are in Seychelles as I speak to you now. Still government also trying these efforts. For taxpayers, we try and do the right thing as government, but people don't know about it. 14 of those, as we speak now with you, are in the US, in the different states of the US. They are working and they are making sure that they earn money and come back in South Africa. A majority of more than 50 of them are in our ships, in the oceans economy. They are there saving, working. They'll come home when they're on leave. So these are opportunities that's for, Africans or black young people never had before.
DM, just going back to the economics, tourism seems to be doing quite well in the country at the moment. Just give us a picture of how the industry is doing at the moment in terms of growth.
Well, as you know, we were in a technical recession, but some few weeks ago, I think we're out of the technical recession, which is good for us. But for tourism sector, even if we were in technical recession, tourists still came to the country. So tourism is one of the sectors that, even if your economy is not functioning well, you still have many people who come here because they believe in what we offer as a country. They believe in what they come here for. So it has been doing okay, even if our growth is not as what we projected as government, as you know. Also, the economy is not functioning very well, but tourists came. But now it is going to be even much more. And to me, the increase in tourism for last year is plus minus 14% over and above. So it means that our target was about 10 million. So we surpassed that to have 14 million more people who came to South Africa. So we are a country of choice for destination for people to come here and experience what we have. And of course, as you know, we stand as the gateway for others who want to go to Africa. They pass through us. We are at the southern tip. We are a big connector in terms of the other provinces. Then if they come here, we are like a Dubai. Dubai, you connect to every world. In Africa, in the AU, within the 54 countries, if you come to those, we happen to be, a country that people then can come here through. Of course, our infrastructure is much better like others. As you know, 2010, people thought that we are living in a jungle. They will see a very funny airport, and they saw this airport. Some of them are asking, are we in transition? When are we getting a flight to South Africa? They were told, you are here in Johannesburg International or Tambo, you are in South Africa. They couldn't believe the infrastructure of the airport, the way is beautiful. They thought they'll see pythons and elephants at the airport waiting to grab them. But they saw a world status airport that we are in Africa. And also, for those good, our hotels, you know them, our facilities are very good. Road infrastructure. In fact, 2010 helped us to make sure that we can deal much more with what we could have dealt with, for many years, because we could be able to deal with the road infrastructure, R21, in Joburg. It used to be a dark street, whatever. Now, 5 lanes, both sides and all that, moving. Hotels, hotel facilities, they're still building even much more, and all those. Everything, a place to go. Sand Parks, is there with their facilities. People like Kruger National Park were there yesterday, full capacity with tourists. Some of them are even waiting for us to go and all that. So with this, tourists come flocking to South Africa, and we hope that will be able, because tourism is one of those sectors that are really a job creator, a game changer, what you believe on, and as a department then work with the South African tourism to make sure that we can be able to take this. Of course, with the environment department, SANParks is under the environmental affairs department, and I had the opportunity and privilege of launching the Mahala Week last week from 18 to 22. Because our people in South Africa don't visit the parks, they don't know the parks. So the Ministry of Environmental Affairs and Tourism deems it fit that every year there's a Mahala Week where people can come without paying the entrance fee to come and experience, because we work together with Environmental Affairs and SANParks, because the facility are theirs. We bring tourists, we encourage people to use these parks. But it's also better for our local people, our students, to know about these parks, so that when they learn about tourism at last, they visualize, they see it. We're at the Golden Gate launching this last week in Free State again.
DM, unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I need to ask you this quick question. Incidents of crime that happen, particularly where tourists are involved, is that not demoralizing to tourists?
Well, it is a problem, and I'm sure you saw the recent one with the Dutch delegation. I must say that the Minister of Police within the security cluster industry of government took upon this, and our Minister of Tourism had to drive all the way from Mpumalanga in Kruger National Park to come here to go to Johannesburg and meet with the Minister of Police, so that we can be able to assure other tourists and visitors that we are on top of these issues, will be able to grab. But to me, crime is everywhere in the world. It's just that we try to publicize ours as if there's no crime anywhere in the world. There is crime, but the issue is how you handle that. And I hope with what we have within government and the security cluster, we can be able to deal with such issues. But it's not like an event. It's a process where we have to go through it and be able to make sure that we are a free country, that everybody can come. So it's pockets of those. It's not like every day you've got a group of 36 or 80 that gets to be robbed. It happens once in a while. It is not right. And I hope that we can go back to the mode of 2010 where criminals can go on holiday. You remember that the president said that the criminals were on holiday for the month of the World Cup and all that. But I believe our strategies as government and mechanisms we put to combat this together with communities that can help us as government. Government alone cannot deal with everything, but it is our cooperation and our working together with communities to make sure that we profile our country, but also it is safe for people, for us, and also for people who visit us to come. But I think those few cases won't, dampen the spirit of tourists to come. As I said yesterday, we were at Kruger National Park, full to capacity. They never said no, because there's these incidents we are going back. They're still enjoying themselves there, but it is something that crime is one thing that government is really on and making sure that we can be able to grapple with.
Deputy Minister, thank you very much. I know that it was a rush. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. That was the Deputy Minister of Tourism, Elizabeth Tabete, just saying that as government, they are on top of the situation in terms of reassuring tourists about crime in the country, and that the various clusters of government are dealing with the situation. Any incidents, they're on top of it to make sure that tourists are reassured. With that, it's back to you, Elvis, in the studio.
Thank you, Palesa, with that report. Now, Parliament has confirmed that its principal officer has started to look for an alternative auditing firm to do its work. Now, this comes after yesterday's announcement that its decision to terminate its contract with KPMG. Parliament says continued links with the auditing firm KPMG risk damaging the reputation of the House. The move is over a scandal involving the influential Gupta family, which is connected to President Jacob Zuma. It includes a contract KPMG had with a medical aid scheme for members of Parliament.
Our principal officer will be carrying out work to find an alternative firm to do our work. So that process there is happening. We will be attending to that internal organizational restructuring differently and so on. And processes there will also be attended to.
There have been mixed reactions from political parties on yesterday's judgment in the High Court in the Western Cape that gave Parliament 18 months to force political parties to disclose private funding. Some political parties fear that the ruling could jeopardize their funding. The DA has warned that the judgment could render Parliament's work unnecessary. The application was launched by My Vote Counts. It's a non-profit company aimed at improving the accountability, transparency and inclusiveness of elections and politics in South Africa.
The judgment comes as a special committee of Parliament is reviewing the law governing the funding of political parties. My Vote Counts challenged the constitutionality of the Promotion of Access to Information Act. It argued that the legislation did not provide for a systematic recording and disclosure of information relating to private funding of parties. Judge Shenaz Mir agreed with My Vote Counts and ordered Parliament to correct the defect in the Act.
As MVC, we are happy with the judgment. What it means is that there's recognition that political party funding information is required for the effective exercise of the right to vote, the right to make a political choice. MVC has argued consistently that the right to vote is not just the right to make an X, but the right to make an informed vote. And I think this judgment confirms that.
The DA initially opposed the application, but now questions whether the judgment is not superfluous.
The only question that we have is whether it's necessary for Parliament to amend the Promotion of Access to Information Act, or whether the job has already been done in terms of the new bill.
The EFF has welcomed the ruling.
We fully welcome the judgment and we're willing to show our books in any way. As the EFF, we have been opening up our books publicly to our members and to all interested parties. We do not have any dodgy funders as the EFF.
The UDM says the ruling is a victory for democracy and accountability. It could see the current parliamentary process accelerated.
In fact, what I think it does, it makes it more urgent for this current exercise to be concluded, because the PIA Act will just remove the disallowance of disclosure. What we're busy with is to indicate the who, how, and when it must be disclosed. So it's actually an injection into the arm or into the work of this ad hoc committee.
The High Court has given Parliament 18 months to change the law. Vuyani Green, SABC News, Parliament.
And of course, that's why we're asking you on our poll today, what do you make of all of this? How will it change the face of political parties? Will the disclosure of that political funding assist in fighting corruption in South Africa? Now, so far, 306 votes in. 66% of you here in South Africa, as well as on the African continent, are suggesting that it will assist in fighting corruption. Only 34% are saying no. You're also tweeting us on the question that we posed to you. Let's take a look at some of those. On the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on our Facebook page. You can do so at any time. During the course, of course, you've got a number of hours still to vote. This one coming from Paul says, for as long as a person is corrupt, then corruption will continue. They agreed to this because they already have ways of covering their tracks. Well, if you corrupt it hard, he says it will continue. So you can also let us know what's on your mind. We'll read them as we continue. But right now, Cosatu Deputy General Secretary Solly Petwe has refuted NUMSA's claims that yesterday's march was about politics and Cosatu's preferred presidential candidate. SABC News spoke to Petwe a little bit earlier when we interviewed him.
Well, they have that right to say whatever they want to say, but I think we spoke at the end of the handing of the memorandum. That's when we spoke about the issue of politics. I mean, NUMSA has been for many years. In fact, NUMSA was part of the foundation, the founder of Cosatu. They were there, they knew what was the relationship, what is the relationship between the trade union movement, in particular the federation and the political party in the ANC. What have we achieved between with the politics in the ANC? So we did spoke about our candidates yesterday, but that was not the main issue. In our memorandum, there is nothing about Cyril Ramaphosa. But when we addressed, we did say something about our candidate.
Put it in bright.
with the stories of abuse from the other 8. But they haven't been ready to pursue any angles. They've offered their support. They've offered the comfort to the 8s, and it's been an amazing journey.
It feels like your heart actually literally sunk in your shoes.
It wasn't a long encounter. I think at the time I froze.
The way the criminal justice system deals with sexual violence is problematic. And I don't know, unless there's a fundamental change in many things, the way prosecutors deal with the victim in the matter.
For all investigative insights, stay tuned to Special Assignment every Saturday at 17:30.
Well, a very good morning and welcome to AM News Live at 10:00 hours across all Central Africa regions.
A fitting send-off for a revolutionary giant, a life dedicated in service of the people.
The result means that the Swallows are out of the ABC Multiple League and drop to the amateur 4th tier of South African football, the SAB League.
Tune in on AM News every Saturday and Sunday from 10 hours.
Now, close to 500,000 people have been forced to flee the Myanmar military and resettle in crude refugee camps along the Bangladesh border in the last month. Dozens of villages have been burnt to the ground and in ashes in the Rakhine state of Myanmar in a scorched earth policy to drive the Rohingya people away from their homes and their farms. The United Nations has described the situation as a textbook case of ethnic cleansing. Salam Media, a humanitarian journalism portal in association with Trade Route Mall in Asia, will be having an exhibition showcasing the plight of the Rohingya people in Myanmar and Bangladesh, and to recreate the environment and conditions in which the Rohingya are living in order to educate society here in South Africa about this. Joining us in studio is Azar Vardy, a director at Salam Media. Very good morning to you, Azar, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Now, you were in Myanmar. Tell us about the conditions of the Rohingya people and what is going on there.
Well, I've been on the border of Bangladesh and Myanmar, so on the Bangladeshi side. The Myanmar government's not allowing journalists to enter on the other end. It's extremely devastating. It's tragic. I haven't seen refugee camps like this in my life, and I've been to several of them around the world, unfortunately in conflict situations. You've got the compounded weather, so the monsoons are lashing that area. It's continuous rain. People are coming in huge amounts of people. Like, you know, in 2 weeks we had 500,000 people almost coming across the borders, and as a result of that, NGOs are really struggling to keep up and to provide the necessary food, sanitation and housing that's required as these people come in. So very, very difficult situation. It's mud all over the place. These plastic homes that are just kept up with few sticks of bamboo are literally built upon mud pools. Even the rivers that are flowing through there have become muddied, and there's no clean water, very little food, and a very, very difficult situation. In fact, we found babies that are being born in those conditions, and babies at the same time that are dying in those muddied, terrible, watery conditions.
Now, if I look at these conditions, it looks absolutely horrific. Look at the mud that you were describing when you were there. Now, looking at the situation of the Rohingya, tell us about how the idea then was created to recreate the environment in which they live there, to show South Africans what they are exposed to.
Well, we must take into cognizance that this is a genocide that's happening in front of our eyes. We said never, never again at the end of Bosnia. We said never, never again at the end of World War II. And here we are in 2017 experiencing all of it. It's just that the distance is so great, you know, a couple of thousand kilometers between us and Myanmar and Bangladesh and that entire area. So the idea came about to try and recreate that environment, or as close as possible to that, and allow South Africans to move through there and to witness and see and bear testimony to what these people are experiencing at the moment. And that's the idea that came up, and we said, let's do it at the Trade Route Mall. It's in Indonesia, it's close by, it's a very diverse community around the mall, and the mall management has been kind enough to allow us to do this kind of a thing. So there'll be poetry recitals, there'll be cartoons that will be put up, some of the images from the conflict and what's happening, there'll be video screenings, and a recreation of a small refugee camp. In fact, these tents will be put up and people will be able to enter and see and try and get that kind of a feeling of what it is to actually be a refugee.
What are you hoping South Africans to gain from this, and how can they assist?
Well, I think South Africans, we've known globally for our successes in transition from apartheid to democracy, how we did that peacefully. There's so much we can teach and we can share with the world. The sense of appreciation when you go to these areas and they realize that you come all the way from a country thousands of kilometers away just to come and spend some time with us, to talk to us, to engage with us, to share our pain. They really, really appreciate that. So there are aid agencies that are currently doing humanitarian work on the ground there. People can donate towards those aid agencies, and we've seen the food and that already reaching and making a difference. They're setting up medical camps, and all of these by South African organizations. So that's a wonderful gesture. And most importantly, I think, is to educate people about what is happening. So spread the word, let people know, and stand up and say that this is injustice. It shouldn't be happening. And we as South Africans, we stand on the side of justice wherever it is around the world, and we should put a stop to it.
Why are the Rohingya being exterminated in Myanmar, seems like it?
Well, they've been living there for the last 800 years. They are indigenous to the Rakhine state. They live there, and the Myanmar government would have the rest of the world believe that they are actually Bengalis that have come across from Bangladesh during the colonial periods. But they have a long history of over 800 years in that particular region. Right now, there is a huge mineral and oil deposits that have been discovered under that particular piece of land. So oil and gas in the billions of barrels are there. In fact, it puts them right up there in the top 10 oil and gas production countries of proven reserves. So a number of international countries are trying to, and international companies are vying for those deals. There's a pipeline that has been created from a town called Sitwe. It's on the port in Myanmar, going right through across this land into China. So, Middle Eastern ships that dock there don't need to go all the way to China. So there's a lot of geopolitics and business that's involved in all of this. And this is the main reason why these poor people, literally farmers, you saw the type of pictures out there on the screen, have been pushed and have been forced off their land so that companies can literally gain the business rights there. That's bottom line what's driving all of this.
How can people that's interested come through and enjoy what you are providing to them in terms of the visuals and education that you're basically giving them? How can they participate in all of this, and when does it start?
Well, we're looking to start on the 3rd or 4th of October. That's coming up next week, and it will go on until the 14th of October at the Trade Route Mall in Indonesia in Gauteng. They can also go to the social media blogs of a group called Protect the Rohingya. It's a advocacy group in South Africa that has been doing lots of work for years in raising the voices of the Rohingya people. And by following these social media accounts, you'll probably keep yourself quite updated on what's happening in the latest news from there.
Thank you so much for giving us an update in terms of where we are in that part of the world. That was Azar Vardi. He's a director at Salam Media. He was in the country. He's telling us about the plight of the Rohingya people in Myanmar and the policy to drive the Rohingya from their homes and farms. Now, as you know, the UN has described the situation as a textbook case of ethnic cleansing. You also heard the reasons that Azar has mentioned in relation to what is happening there. It's not about economic emancipation for the people of Myanmar, I can tell you that, or for the Rohingya. It's something else. But right now, it's time for the sports news with Kendall Makamate.
Elvis, thank you very much. A very interesting discussion you just had there about the Rohingya people. Well, you know what? We've got more interesting things as well to bring to you right here on Newsroom. We're talking about how South Africa is playing Bangladesh. First test in a whole series of very stringent tests over the next summer. And we've got at the crease, we still have Aiden Makram as well as Dean Elgar. I think the last time I checked it was 74 without losses, 77 without loss after 22 overs. And the run rate is 3.61. Let's take live commentary from Senves to hear what's going on.
That might just, no, it won't have the pace to go all the way. Just going to be picked up before it gets there. Taskin Ahmed doing the chasing.
That could just be as a result of the wet outfield that we discovered as soon as we walked onto it this morning. Had been watered quite a lot as well. Not as quick as expected and as it always is here in Poch.
Yes, the grass here at St. Mary's Park doesn't get the luxury of dying off and going dormant like most of it does on the Highveld, because it's a very popular destination for winter cricket.
It's good to see some of the Africa T20 Cup games as well here. Cliffhanger between, I think it was the Northerns and Gauteng, which made both sides, actually it was Gauteng that qualified for semi-finals thereafter. I think they played against Eastern Province. It's a ground that generally is used a lot as this over comes to an end. Good discussions between Morne Mokul and Otis Gibson, most definitely on their approach. They've had a good session to suss out the pitch. Quite relaxed as well. I'm enjoying seeing that, you know.
All right, as we're watching those riveting pictures coming out of Senves out in Potchefstroom with that first test between Bangladesh and South Africa, breaking news, you heard it here first. Harun Lorgat and Cricket South Africa have parted ways, apparently because of a breakdown in communication, a breakdown in relationship. But there it is. Harun Lorgat and Cricket South Africa no longer have a working relationship with immediate effect. Now, going on to other sporting news, there were goals galore in last night's second round of UEFA Champions League group matches. In some of those matches, we speak a little bit about how Manchester United beat CSKA Moscow 4-1 and Basel beat Benfica 5-0, while Bayern Munich suffered a 3-0 loss to Paris Saint-Germain.
And there goes Neymar again. Neymar with the ball across, what a chance! And PSG have the first goal. Dani Alves has fired them in front.
PSG were all over Bayern from the word goal in a Group B clash in Paris. Dani Alves' goal was followed by a sweeping counter-attack with a sublime finish by Edison Cavani.
From Martinez, and there's Cavani!
In the second half, Neymar pounced on a loose ball inside Bayern's penalty area and made it 3-0 to PSG.
And Neymar's got his goal.
Manchester United maintained their unbeaten record in Moscow with Romelu Lukaku continuing his good start to life at the club.
Looking for Lukaku!
Anthony Martial made it 2 to United from the penalty spot. 26 minutes into the match, Lukaku tapped in his 10th goal in 9 matches this season.
And he's got it! Oh, completely missed by Berezutski. Martial.
Henrik Mkhitaryan scored the 4th before a late consolation by Moscow.
Oh, that's nice. Kuchayev!
Juventus were at home to Olympiacos and had to wait until the second half to find the back of the net thanks to substitute Gonzalo Higuain. Olympiacos put on a brave fight, but Mario Mandzukic scored Juve's second goal to give last season's runners-up a 2-0 win. Chelsea came back from a goal down to beat Atletico Madrid 2-1 in Spain's capital city. The Wanda Metropolitano Stadium was silenced as Belgian substitute Michy Batshuayi scored the winner deep into stoppage time.
Chelsea have won it with virtually the last kick.
Being hassled by Ndlovu and he's lost it. And Ndlovu has picked a good pass.
In other matches, Bafana Bafana's Dino Ndlovu provided an assist as Karabakh lost 2-1 at home to Roma.
There's the work from the South African. And Pedro Henrique controlled it sufficiently to get the ball out of his feet and line up the shot to beat his countryman.
Barcelona beat Sporting Lisbon 1-0 and Anderlecht suffered a 3-0 loss at home to Celtic. Mduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
way through.
Now, Banyana legend and caretaker coach Desiree Ellis will remain part of the team setup and might be appointed as assistant coach when SAFA announces the head coach of the senior women's team. When Banyana won the Cosatu Women's Championship in Zimbabwe on Sunday, it was expected that the association would just simply appoint Ellis on a permanent basis. But Chief Executive Dennis Mumble says Ellis was among the 3 shortlisted candidates for the position and will be given some role in the setup.
Banyana walking through the OR Tambo International Arrivals Terminal with a trophy on Monday was a rare sighting. It's not often that national football teams return from abroad with trophies to show off. The team won the Cosatu Cup the previous day with Desiree Ellis, who had won the cup as player at the helm. But that doesn't seem to have convinced the powers that be that she has what it takes to be appointed on a permanent basis.
She was one of 3 of the coaches that were interviewed for the head coach position. We have said that we needed to now go and negotiate with the coaches in order the selection that was made by the panel. One clearly it didn't work out for us. Now we're coaching with the we're negotiating with the second one. So hopefully, very soon, I don't want to give a specific date, but very soon we'll have a Banyana head coach.
The association has hinted in the past that it has cast its net wide, implying that a foreign coach is favored for the position. Mumble says they intend appointing someone with a better pedigree who will also be tasked with grooming a local coach for the position.
One of the criteria for whoever it is that we're discussing with, they must make sure that they train South African coaches to take over from them. There's no doubt about that. It is part of the contract that they must produce and develop those coaches whilst they are in charge if we go for a foreign coach.
Meanwhile, the draw for the annual Sticks Morewa Soccer Challenge was conducted in Soweto with 56 senior teams to compete in the tournament that starts on Sunday. Pesinkatlo, SABC News, Soweto.
Now, the second round of the African Bank Under-18 Football Challenge took place in Bloemfontein this past weekend. The tournament is in its first year and is already in partnership with the universities to create an environment experience to motivate the young soccer players to build on furthering their education in years to come. For some of these learners, it's the first time they're leaving their rural areas. By hosting the tournament on university premises, it's hoped that it will motivate them to work hard at school to allow them to hopefully enroll at a tertiary institution in future. The tournament, held in partnership with the universities in each province, is an initiative aimed at giving the youngsters exposure and hope.
Through this, we would find ourselves coming up with a kind of a bridge. A bridge would be connecting the school's learner who would be in a school, and then a bridge for him or her over to the tertiary institution. So today already they are experiencing the university environment. They are here today, and I believe having experienced this environment, they would so much wish to come here at a later stage after 2 years or so to study further.
It's going to benefit learners because some of them are coming here for the first time. They see the university for the first time. They are enjoying themselves at the university playing fields, and that they should play. And at the end of the day, some of them might end up being students here, and some of them might have careers through this. And we also said to the university we are very thankful for them.
Ntu Secondary School from Bethlehem won in the boys section. And Soutlong Secondary School from Kwakwa were victors in the girls section. The tournament is set to continue in 4 other provinces in the country, with Limpopo being the next host in Palaboro at the University of Venda. Now moving on to one of the other national sports that this country has got. The Sharks are intent on keeping their winning streak alive. The Currie Cup log leaders have built up a string of victories, winning 9 out of their 10 matches. They're now up against the Lions in Durban on Friday, and head coach Robert Dupriya takes us through his team.
We're getting Sabu and Corsi back from the Springboks, and we're also getting Dan back. And then, Franco Marais will come in at a hooker for Chile. That's with the Springboks. And in the back line, Jeremy Ward, unfortunately, is going to be out for the rest of the season. with a collarbone injury, and Tristan Bluett will come into his place at 13, and for the rest of the team will stay the same.
Now, Tiger Woods has for the first time publicly acknowledged what's been long whispered in golfing circles, that he might never return to competitive golf.
Area where you would not come back to competitive golf?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know what my future holds for me. All I've told you guys, I'm hitting 60-yard shots. But you know, overall, I'm very optimistic about how I'm progressing. As I said, the pain's gone, but I don't know what my golfing body's going to be like, because I haven't hit a golf shot yet. And so that's going to take time to figure that out and figure out what my capabilities are going forward. And there's no rush.
And of course, Tiger Woods has won no less than 14 majors, has previously held the #1 spot for a record 683 weeks. That's some 13 years that he was the best golfer in the world. That's where we're going to leave it now. We're going to take a short break, and you know what? When we come back, we'll be watching a brand new program, Midday Report. Make sure you stay close on 404. Until tomorrow, this is Sydney.